set.
Shout out to the chess club.
When I was just a lad, you know, I met a gal from old Bordeaux. She had blonde hair and blue eyes too.
Let me ride on the ring-dang-doo, the ring-dang-doo. Now what is that? Soft and round like a pussy cat. Got a hole in the middle and split in two. That's what you call the ring-dang-doo.
Took me down into her cellar, said that I was a mighty fine fellow. Fed me wine and
Whiskey
whiskey
too. Let me ride on the ring-dang-doo, the ring-dang-doo. Now what is that? It's soft and round like a pussy cat. Got a hole in the middle and split in two. That's what you call a ring-dang-doo.
Her father come in, angrily said, now you have lost
Your maiden head.
Pack your bags and coat tags too.
Make your living off the ring-dang-doo, the ring-dang-doo. Now what is that? Soft and round like a pussy cat. Got a hole in the middle and split in two. That's what you call a ring-dang-doo.
She went off to be a whore, hung this sign upon her door.
$1 each and 3 for 2. Take a crack at the ring-dang-doo, the ring-dang-doo. Now what is that? Soft and round like a pussy cat. Got a hole in the middle and it's split in two. And that's what they call a ring-dang-doo.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Glad to have you ready to rock and to roll. Hopefully you are too, my friends. How are we doing on this lovely day? How you doing, lady? How you doing? How you doing, Lanny, Lanny, Lanny? Lady! I'm doing good. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. Hopefully you are. Yeah, I'm rocking and rolling. I'm feeling good. Feeling good. We've got a lot of stuff actually in the last couple days, which you'd expect. I mean, we got Gamescom, so we have like 3 different new boss fights for Crimson Desert. We've got a bunch of stuff for Avowed because a handful of people tried that. We've also got some information about Indiana Jones because some people tried that. We've got discussions of what's going on at Tokyo Game Show. Looks like that's where Death Stranding 2 is going to be. Some drama around and in the world of Fallout as well. There we go. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 gameplay deep dives. We've got Space Marine 2 deep dives. Some insane stats with regard to Black Myth Wukong. I mean, even now, Yeah, there's about 2 million people playing the game right now, which is still insane. A lot of people thought that peak would happen for one day and then go away, but no, it's still up there. Of course, drama with Xbox bringing Indiana Jones to PS5. I was going to do like a whole segment looking at like fanboy reactions. Hasn't been as dramatic as I expected. There have not been many people burning their Xboxes this time around. There haven't been that many people singing sad songs. You remember when they initially... I'm trying to remember what piece of news. I think it was when they said that they were going to bring 4 games to PlayStation. There were people like actually burning their Xbox t-shirts and burning their... It's a lot of burning. Burning their consoles or putting it in the toilet and trying to flush it. You know, really stupid stuff. But there are some people being outrageous. And this time around, hasn't really been that. Hasn't really been that level of drama, which is, I think, probably good. But there's not as much to laugh at, you know. But what are you going to do? It's also today Hideo Kojima's birthday. Nobody Google it. Nobody Google. How old do you think he is? Put it in chat. How old do you think he's turning today? Because I wouldn't have guessed this. 48, 50 to 60, 55, 57, 59, 50, 53, 52, 68. Ooh, baby, 95. 48, 48. I've seen a few 48s. Today is his 61st birthday. 61. Doesn't look it, right? But he's been around for like 35 years. So he's also like, he's been around for a long time. But yeah, he's an old dude. He's a boomer. Yeah, Kojima is 61. I mean, I'm guessing he moisturizes. Yeah, I mean, there he looks a little older. I can see it there. This is a few years ago, I think, but he looks a little older. Part of it, he's got the long hair, like the long bangs, which just covers up his face, which helps. How old is Hidetaka? Yeah, he's only 49. Dude's still got like 20 years left in him. And Miyamoto's 71. 10 years older. So, there you go. Random bit of news you didn't really need, but you got it anyways. You got it anyways. Okay. I thought it would be fun if we like popped back in and looked at Concord's like player numbers. But there's something going on where like they have player numbers blocked. I don't know if they can like opt in or opt out of that, but they just don't have player numbers available, which is weird. Even though it launches today, officially for everybody, they have it blocked. If you look down here though, this is subject to change, but if you look down here, it's not there. I think it's under charts. They have owner estimations, and this will increase over time, but if that's actually anywhere close to accurate to how many people bought the game, that's not good. that not good. That not good. So we'll see. They have 7,000 people watching it on Twitch right now on launch day. All-time peak was during the betas at 113,000. It's gone to 17,000 for 24 hours, so we'll see. Not to be cynical, but is it possible Sony talked with Steam to prevent that info? I really don't know. I thought all this was just API based. It's just the data that's distributed. Maybe it unlocks fully later, like But even the beta was a separate app, and you could still find that and look at player numbers. But with this, it's the official game and you still can't see it. So I just genuinely don't know what is going on. I don't know if they can opt out. I don't know if it's like a privacy thing you can turn on. I don't know. It's really weird. But anyway. Beta. Just saw Skull and Bones player numbers. Oh, they got 700. And that's through Steam. Most people who are playing that, I think, are playing through Ubisoft Play or Uplay or whatever the hell it is. I can never remember the names. It's like EA Play and then Ubisoft Plus, I think. Something like that. Anyway. Those Concord fanboys really got blown out. Somebody was telling me, they're like, yeah, dude, they're sharing your video in their like private Discord and they're freaking out. I was like, sorry. But like, honestly, just to give you like a little info on kind of like behind the scenes, there is like a weird guilt often when I make a video on a game that's just bad. And I say as much in the video. Because that game does represent, for a lot of people, dozens and dozens, or sometimes hundreds and hundreds of people. Like, there are people that spent years of their lives working on this. There was even the discussion that Concord, I don't know if you guys saw this, but there was, I guess we can do this as a segment, Jacob. New segment! There was even a discussion from the lead character. I guess I should lead this in a little better. So there was a post by a guy who is the lead, or a girl, I don't know, but a lead character designer at Firewalk for Concord. So lead character designer on Concord. And of course, no bullying. I'm not saying anybody goes and like pursues this person or anything, but like this is somebody that worked on Concord from the very, very beginning. Okay. And they said today, Fireworks Studios, or Firewalk, I always want to say work, it's because it's more exciting, launched Play Concord. The game has been in development for around 8 years. And I've been there for almost 5. We don't get a lot of launch days in our careers, so today is special for a ton of reasons. Oblige me some good vibes today. A big reason is being invited into a position of creative trust on a new experience. Obviously, it's a group effort. And having a seat at the table with others who inspire you and push you to do your best is a tremendous privilege. That trust they gave, or that trust gave the game so much identity. Gave it something. More personally, I feel so lucky to have had another run at game design with my long-term friend and colleagues, and then list some of those other coworkers. Concord has so much humanity and depth to it. I don't even know what the hell that means. I really hope people give it a shot. Insanely proud of the game. We're strapped in and ready to push it for years to come. Not sure if you'll get the money to do that, but time will tell. But with this, my takeaway is like 8 freaking years. 8 years. That's crazy. And it's the craziness of live service games where somebody can work on a game for almost a decade and it can just totally flop. Like, it's unbelievable that anybody would spend that much time. Because rewind the clocks 8 years. What happened 8 years ago? Does anybody remember? What's a big game that launched roughly 8 years ago and that might have inspired this game 8 years ago? Overwatch. Yeah, sure was. Dude, I saw somebody call this Underwatch and I died laughing. May 3rd, 2016. They say this has been in the works for 8 years. So it's like they played Overwatch and we're like, oh, we could make one of those. And then started working on it. Now, I don't know what they mean by it's been in the works for 8 years. Does that mean the first time somebody said, hey, we should make a game was 8 years ago? I don't know. Does that mean they made the team 8 years? I don't know, because they're very, very vague about it. But they're openly saying it took them 8 years to put this together. So I don't think it's a coincidence that those timelines line up in that way. This isn't a Lawbreakers situation. Lawbreakers, they put the game together and they were working on it before Overwatch was announced. So there is no doubt. Can we get MS Paint? Sure, I can MS Paint this up. I'll MS Paint this bitch. Look at this. So with like Overwatch, we'll just say Overwatch is like the gold, okay? Released here. Actually, to make it easier, let's say it was in development here, released here, okay? Lawbreakers was something like this. They were working on it for a while before it was announced, and then it released. But because of this gap, everybody just was like, oh, it's Overwatch. Even though everything they did for Lawbreakers was done well before the announcement and release of Overwatch, that's all anybody could take away from it. Concord, though, is straight up, right as Overwatch comes out, they start working on it. It takes 8 years. And then it comes out. And that's why, like, I struggle to feel truly bad, because at any point along this road, they could have said, hey, maybe we shouldn't. And if they had talked to anybody who was being honest with them, they would have seen that. For obvious reasons, I can't be specific, okay? But I've done consultant work on games. I actively do consultant work on games. People and studios, big and small, will like actually pay me to go and give them feedback. Okay, like they could be 2, 3, 4 years out from launch, and they'll pay people like me or other critics to come in and tell them what we see ahead of time. So we get to play the game or hear their pitch or whatever and tell them like, I really don't think this is going to go over well. Yeah, I'm guessing you didn't consult on Suicide Squad? No, I did not. I know somebody that did give them feedback. I don't know if they were like consultants, but I do know somebody that saw it well ahead of time, and yeah. But in that case, at least they told me in private was that they did not have great feedback, but none of their feedback was heeded, or as Michael says, was take-headed of. So I like, it's the other thing to remember with consultants. Just because somebody consultates on a game does not mean that their feedback will be taken and like used, right? Like I could hire a consultant to give me feedback on a YouTube video I'm about to launch, but their feedback could be just like, I don't know. I think it'd be really trippy and cool if you made everything black and white and then also blurred the whole video. That could be their feedback. Doesn't mean I'm going to take it. They consulted, but doesn't mean I'm going to take the recommendations. And so you have to be careful when looking at like consultancy stuff, because sometimes they do absolutely take the feedback and other times they do not. But with all this said, like if they had hired actual consultants or just brought in regular gamers, had them sign an NDA, I don't care, and then give feedback at any point along this road, the feedback, I guarantee you, would have been, it seems like another Overwatch clone. And I just don't think it does enough to really stand out. I just don't see this working out. And that's tough feedback to give. It really is. Like imagine if your friend asks you, I guess not really a friend, but imagine if somebody you know or just you're hired to come in and give feedback on something somebody's poured their heart and soul into for close to a decade. And your feedback is, yeah, this isn't going to work. This is a waste. That's tough. Imagine like your friend has been working on a novel for years and years and years. And then you have to tell them like, no, this isn't going to work. It's tough. But that's literally what a consultant is being hired for. And I've consulted on some games that are still years away that look really sick and I think are going to be amazing. And I've consulted on some other stuff that was hot dog garbage and slop, and you know, I put it maybe a little bit more PC than that, but I mean, we'll see what happens with those. One of the ones I was asked to talk about or asked to look at was eventually canceled, and it was probably for the best. But anyway, all of this to say, it can be tough to be the quote unquote bad guy when talking about these games. But at the end of the day, my job is to talk about video games and share my thoughts on them. And sometimes I piss off people because I have a bad take, or because I have a niche take, or whatever. You know, like the Stalker fans were not too happy that I said that demo I played was a whole lot of garbage. But I'm going to tell you what I think, even if it makes people upset. And that's all you can really do. You know, like, my guarantee to you guys is I'll tell you what I actually think. And if that means that I tear Concord apart because I think it's just a bit of a... It's a game that encapsulates everything wrong with PlayStation's current strategy. And I think that that's more than anything why a lot of people are reveling. And I mean, you watch on social media, it seems like people are really celebrating the collapse of the game. And it's just come out. I mean, we'll see if it actually fully collapses, but it seems like just nobody's interested. It's total radio silence on it. But I think the reason that a lot of people are like really reveling in it is because it perfectly encapsulates everything that's wrong with PlayStation, and it's more of a symbol than anything else. The game is solid, but like even being solid as a free-to-play game, it's still, I don't think, would be worth really spending a lot of time, because it's another 5v5 hero shooter. And if it launched 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, maybe it could pop off, but it's literally launching like a decade too late. So I just think it's a tale as old as time, and unfortunately some of these executives have to learn the lesson the hard way. But it's, I mean, it's like people were joking about where they're like, oh yeah, no, they're going to launch this, and then PlayStation executives are going to be baffled nobody's playing, because they're like, wait, we spent $250 million on this. How could people not love it? And I think, you know, honestly, games like Black Myth, games like Space Marine 2, games like Pal World, games like Helldivers, those are popping off because I think they just go back to like that 360 era of gaming, at least in terms of feel, where it's not trying to be built to like teach you a lesson or to lecture you about anything. They're not trying to make I forget who initially, I think it was some comedian, but they're like, what is it with media nowadays? Not being entertaining, but being important. You know, like so many of these movies nowadays, it's not really about whether or not it's just fun to engage with or watch or play. It's always about how important like the message or whatever is. And it's just, I think people are just kind of sick of it. They're like, I want to play a game like Black Myth Wukong where I play as like a monkey beating up animals and using crazy magical abilities that look beautiful on screen. And yeah, it's not like a 10 out of 10 masterpiece. It's got some problems, but it's just a fun game. Same with like Space Marine 2. When you guys finally play that, it plays very similar to like a 360 game. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I do think critics are going to be pissy about it. I think you'll see some reviews that come out and be like, oh, the outdated design of the levels finds the game feeling much more linear and less exciting and engaging than it could have been, which could all be very, very fair. But did you have fun? And I think people will have a lot of fun. And that's why I think it's so great to see that there are other huge studios that are starting to get some of these big developers a little nervous, like Pearl Abyss from Korea working on Crimson Desert, or Game Science from China working on Black Myth Wukong. If there's other studios that are willing to come in and pour hundreds of millions of dollars into these games, into these projects that are just solid games, first and foremost, I think that gives a little bit more competition and maybe kicks them in the teeth so that they start actually focusing on what gamers really, really want. Because the thing with Concord, the thing with Suicide Squad, games like this, which are even Saints Row Reboot, all of those, if you asked any average gamer that actively engages with video game discourse, YouTubers, streamers, that type of thing, they all could have told you that this is how the story would end. And I think they knew that. But I don't think they cared because the game was important. Because they were trying to evolve it for a modern audience, for the next generation of gamers or what have you, whatever the excuse was. They actively developed a game that they knew the core of the gaming community would not like, but they thought that they would get away with it because the new generation of gamers would support them. And they just didn't. They didn't show up because it's kind of a myth that there's a modern audience. You know, in my opinion, as far as I can tell, games that are being built for modern audiences flop because there doesn't seem to be a modern audience. Gamers are gamers. You know, it's not like there's millions of people sitting on the sidelines waiting to play a game like Saints Row Reboot. They didn't show up. They didn't buy it. They weren't interested. And I think it's because they don't really exist. I think gamers are just gamers. And so long as developers are creating games with contempt at the core, I don't think they'll find any success. Okay, David, how dare you? Flopping like Ron Jeremy. Jesus Christ. What a vivid image. Yeah, I just think it's... Hopefully this is the first step in a new direction as all these games come out and start to flop and show that this just doesn't work. You'll start to see them looking at games like a Pal World, like Helldivers, like Black Myth Wukong, and even Baldur's Gate 3. And hopefully they start to realize, yeah, on paper, we could technically make a ton more money if we did it this way, this way, this way, this way, and everything was live service, whatever. But the odds of that working are very, very low. You know, very, very low. It's almost like if you... I really think what they're doing is they look at it like this. Live service games are kind of like this. You know, the really successful ones make insane amounts of money. Just insane. The top 1% makes stupid amounts of money. The problem is really more likely if this is the break-even point, okay? Most live service games are like this. So they lose money as long as they're under that break-even point. But once they cross it, they're making ridiculous amounts of money. So it's very much pass fail. Like if you pass, you're printing money. If you fail, you lost a ton. And a lot of executives thought, well, look at how much money we could make up here. That's amazing. We should pursue that. We should do that with all of our big IP. But now they have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 huge flops that have just hemorrhaged money. And they're like, what's going wrong? Whereas a game like Black Myth Wukong, or one of these more standard traditional games, they might start over here, but they start to really pick up profitability much, much faster, much sooner, because they're not making, they're not dealing with server infrastructure costs. They're not having to spend 8 years developing a game that you can see all of in about 35 minutes, So I just hope we go back to this meta, which worked for so long. And as long as gamers keep voting with their wallets and not buying this stuff, they'll get the message. It's like I saw people in chat talking about the cancellation of the Acolyte. remember, they weren't canceling the Acolyte because like there was any sort of feedback over the writing or the cast or whatever. They canceled it because it wasn't making money, and it was clear that the second season would cost probably $200 million and not make a penny. Pretty clear. That's what it was. So they canceled it. Like these corporations, they only really care about the bottom line at the end of the day, which some people freak out about that. I actually celebrate it because it means that they're easy to push around and to predict as well. Because if games like Concord are losing hundreds of millions of dollars, that doesn't work and they have to stop it. So very clearly, if you vote with your wallet, there will be a more positive outcome. So having said all that, I don't really know what else to say. I think just the age of the crappy live service games is hopefully slowing down as a lot more of these come out, and we'll see kind of where they end up, where they transition. I think it's pretty clear Sony's approach is to get this stuff out the door and then reset, which I don't think is a bad strategy. I'm still surprised that they totally canceled the Last of Us Online multiplayer game, but that might have also been because they're going to tie it into the whatever like their next game is. People kind of sleep on that, but Naughty Dog for a long time, they would make games and then they'd like lump in the multiplayer mode in with it. So they might be doing something like that with their next title. I don't know, but I was surprised that they just totally canned that. But anything else that was close to release, like Concord, Helldivers, those games, and the Horizon game that they've spent years on, that like those are going to actually release, and they're hoping that they find some success there. And I think those, you know, I think the Horizon game actually does stand a chance. We do joke with Joel Raptor all the time. I mean, he's a big Horizon fan, and on the podcast we're always like, yeah, it sucks though. You know, we tease him a bit, but I actually do think that could find some success if they really nail that initial launch. But they're a very talented group of guys and gals over there. They've spent years working on that, so I think we're getting there. But time will tell. They're probably announcing it and revealing it next year. Maybe even at Tokyo Game Show with the PS5 Pro, we see it. But we should be seeing it soon. We need more DC games. Well, the Wonder Woman game is coming sometime, somewhere. So we'll see. Okay, let me catch up with this real quick. Everybody, thank you guys across both platforms. We have like about 1,000 people in here. Thank you. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit the like button. That helps the stream out a lot. Or don't. I'm not your dad. Do whatever you want. As much as I understand why The Last of Us Online was canceled, I still would have loved to play it, says Kitty Cat on Twitch. Yeah, I mean, I get it. They at some point were just like, we can finish this, but we will be a live service studio forever. No more single player games. And I think for Sony executives, they looked at it and they're like, we really like winning Game of the Year. So, okay. And like I said, they might still be able to salvage a lot of what they created for a future online mode that does make money. You know, you never know, but I think that's probably what they did. Horizon's getting shit on you. It's one of PlayStation's best-selling games. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a reason why they put so much into it. It does sell well, but the bigger problem, again, talking about how companies work, the bigger problem is that, like, if Horizon did this with sales, the way that Horizon Forbidden West went was like this. It performed just about the same, maybe just a tad worse in some areas, which is not what you want a sequel to do. Like they were hoping the sequel would pop off because that's what happened with like God of War Ragnarok. If this is God of War 2018, God of War Ragnarok way outperformed it. Like I even think Spider-Man 2, it did better than Miles Morales, but that was like a smaller game, but it was about the same as the base Spider-Man on PS4. So they've got these big IP and big franchises, but they're not really growing, which for a big company, a big corporation is like kryptonite. Because again, the only way the stock price goes up is if other numbers go up too, which is why you see like incremental price increases. It's why you see like, why does everything always have to grow? It's because that's the only way the stock price grows. Very, very few companies, except like utility type companies, are okay with treading water. Every other corporation needs to increase the bottom line in order to keep shareholders happy. And that's by, you know, finding ways to increase the numbers. Make number go bigger. So anyway, Chinsas on Twitch, I think that's what your name is. Why are you keep kicking the Concord devs? I thought you only go after lazy and greedy devs. Concord is a polished, honest product. Why go after Firewalk just because they're not selling well? You're not contributing anything this way. You just monetize hate. So I think that there's a sort of, I think there's a flaw in your assumptions at the outset. You say, why go after Firewalk just because they're not selling well? That's not what we're doing. Okay. Maybe it is sarcasm. I don't know, but I do think that there probably are people that feel that way, which is why I'll address it. I'm not going after Concord just because it's selling poorly. For all I know, on PlayStation, it could be selling tremendously well. I don't know. We don't know PlayStation numbers. The reason I talk about Concord is because I just look at the game. We played the game on stream. We play it in videos and stuff. We've tried it. And it just, frankly, is a lackluster game that sure is a bit polished, like graphically, but we've even run into bugs and serious content issues actively while playing it. Some of the stuff that we pointed out, that I pointed out in my videos, ended up being fixed by the time the game launched. One of the big sticking points that I was frustrated with was that there was no penalty system for people leaving matches early. Guess what they added when the game came out? They added a penalty system for people that left the game early. So holding devs' feet to the fire can actually improve the game. But at the end of the day, when we look at a game like Concord, is it worth $40? No. No. Just no. Every other peer in its genre is free to play, has better quality of life options. Marvel Rivals is a fantastic example of a game that is free to play and is doing, in my view, a lot of things in a much more impressive way. And you can't really like counter it because you can do one-to-one feature comparisons and it's just more impressive. So I would agree that there's some people that are just hating on Concord for the sake of hating it. There are some people that are just hating on it because they think the character designs are ugly or whatever. And those people, I would agree, they're bashing the game for bad reasons. Totally agree with that. But that doesn't mean that that's what we're doing here. You know, it's why for all these different types of games that we've talked about, like Suicide Squad even, there's in the group of people that are against a game or that dislike a game, there's some people that dislike it for terrible reasons. And then there's other people that dislike it for very valid reasons. For like Suicide Squad, there were some people that hated it purely because they didn't think that the outfits for Harley Quinn were sexy enough at launch. I actually saw people on X talking about that and saying as much. That's a bad reason to hate the game, okay? If that's the only reason you don't like Suicide Squad, that's stupid. Okay, that's just stupid. However, to then conclude by cherry picking that everybody that dislikes the game is like an incel, that's unfair. And you ignore the actual critiques and criticisms of the people that are critiquing the game in good faith and are actually evaluating what it is, you know. Based comment. Yeah. But they're not wrong though. Yeah, it's what drives me crazy is from my perspective, my job is not to coddle devs or publishers or whatever. It's why I've done stuff with like Ubisoft, for example. And I point to them because they're an example, actually, in my view, of a company that handles criticism surprisingly well, usually. But like I've done reviews with them. I've done all sorts of stuff with them. And I called their last big Assassin's Creed game, I called it a travesty of open world design. I thought it was atrocious. I thought it was horrifying. It was so bad. And it was so disappointing considering the last game they did was AC Origins, which granted set in ancient Egypt. I love it dearly. I'm a little biased because it's ancient Egypt. I love ancient Egypt and I loved Origins in a lot of ways. And then they did that, and I thought it was just. I've done like a 3-hour video. You've heard me ramble about it, okay? I'm not a huge fan of
Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
And despite me tearing the game apart for many, many reasons, Ubisoft will still contact me. They'll still ask me if I want to try games like Star Wars Outlaws early and check it out. Even though I'm like a well-known critic in those circles, they still will take that feedback and work with it. Now, because the way these games are made, if you critique a game in 2020, you probably don't see the results. Even if they go, you're right, we're going to make changes. You probably don't see the effect of those changes for 5, 6, 7 years, just because of how that works. It takes so long to make these games. But you can at least critique something and they'll take that constructive criticism and work with it, right? But that's why, like, you'll notice for something like AC Shadows, when I'm talking about that game, I'm not like centering on, like, I don't even know if it counts as political discourse, but I'm not talking about like the woke narrative of Yasuke being a samurai, whatever. Because if you don't want to play the game for that, cool, that's fine. You can not play a game for any reasons. Nobody's forcing you to buy it. But if I'm going to critique a game, I want to critique the game, the package. And if the game is really good, and then there's this one other thing over here that turns you off, okay, whatever, that's fine. But I'm going to critique the game and try to provide constructive feedback based on that. And again, as we said at the very top, sometimes it pisses people off. Sometimes people get upset that you're critiquing something like Concord and you think that that's unfair. And so be it. But at the very least, my commitment is that I'll tell you what I think of the game, positive or negative, and sometimes it'll be fair, sometimes I'm sure it won't be, and I'll make a mistake or I won't be rational in how I approach it. And in those moments, as is tradition in the internet, when I have a bad take, you guys get to make fun of me because that's just how the internet works. It's beautiful. It really is beautiful. But yeah, Katie says, I think it's very respectful and professional of them to ask you, regardless of negative criticism. It means they're listening and trying to make better games. They don't get all whiny. I mean, I know some people, of course, villainize Ubisoft for various reasons. And many of those reasons are perhaps fair. But there are not many studios that I've been so hard on that still will like actively engage. Again, granted, I did call Todd Howard evil after 2018's Fallout 76. I didn't know how else to describe it. They knew the game was horrible. They still sold it to people and took their money. And so I called him evil. Mean? Yeah, could I have said it in like a more PC way or more like corporate friendly way? Probably. But that's what I said. And as a result, I think like for 5 years, I didn't get a single email returned. I never got any feedback. Never heard a peep from Bethesda Softworks or Bethesda Game Studios. And then that changed once they were bought out from Xbox, because we could go to the Xbox people and figure that out. But as far as I can tell, like BGS put me on a blacklist after calling them out for Fallout 76. So like there are plenty of companies that don't respond to feedback that positively, but that's why I think it's just important to not be like, well, they're trying their hardest. It's like, okay, they're also like, there's no, you tried money. Like, you know, it's like, oh, well, they tried their hardest. Oh, well, good thing now it goes from $70 and it drops to only $30 because it's try hard money. You know, it's like money's money. They're trying to sell you a product at the end of the day. Like if I'm buying a car and people are like, yeah, the car randomly breaks down on the highway, but the engineers really tried their hardest. You'd be like, I don't care. I'm buying a car. Who cares if they tried their hardest? You know, like I don't find that to be a very compelling counter, you know? Yeah, I worked hard for my money. Yeah, exactly. Let me catch up on all these because you guys have been very generous while I've been rambling. I got to catch up on all this. Thank you to all the new followers on Twitch, by the way. Citizen Max, thank you for the 5. I used a small part of your Death Stranding review in my video for my YouTube short. I mentioned you, hope it's okay. If not, I'll remove. Oh yeah, no, that's totally fine. That's fine. And thank you for the super chat. Yeah, I'll go for it. Do you think it's possible we go an entire console generation without a Naughty Dog game? Crazy as Sony's most successful studio to not show this gen. Well, you're forgetting we got remasters and remakes. That's really good. we got treated with those. Yeah, I actually do think it's very possible we don't hear anything from them, which is crazy to think. But yeah, it's looking more and more likely that we don't see anything from Naughty Dog this gen. Because they still are describing it as like early. I pulled up those job postings, whenever that was, like maybe a week or two ago, and they were describing it as early. Let me see. Skilled level designer, senior producer. Is this it? Yeah, this. Naughty Dog jobs. This was posted August 13th. Naughty Dog is looking for a senior producer to join our talented team to work on our next game. So next game, not 2 games away, their next game. Want to get in early and help define the process, requirements, shape the picture, ship our next game and beyond. So they're describing their next game as still being early. So I don't think they're like announcing it this year, releasing next, or now, even probably announcing it next year and releasing it 2026. If they're describing it as early, they have like 4 to 5 year dev cycles. So I don't think we see it until probably 2027. And at that point, we're getting awful close to the end of the generation. So yeah, I'm not expecting that we see it, which is, Stefan, I mean, it's what happens when you waste 5 years on a live service game because Jim Ryan wanted to force you to try and print money. Rango, thank you for the 2. Since Starfield has the rover, Fallout 5 will have a car. One of the actually very good things about BGS is that they design iteratively. So if they put something into their game here, the following features of the next game and the next projects will just bring that stuff over. They always just add a few things, try to refine some old things, and then they just move on and keep adding to it. And it's a solid way to design games. It's also how Rockstar tends to put things together. It means each game doesn't feel like a huge leap usually, but I would not be surprised at all if there's like buggies or rovers or something like that in the next Fallout. Granted, that's like a decade away, so they have plenty of time to work on it, which is depressing to think about, but still. Batul, thank you for the 5. Hey, Luke. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Sure am. Have you seen Act Man's interview with Marty O'Donnell? It's around 1 hour, but I recommend people check it out. Oh, is that the Bungie guy? Is that the one? Because I saw clips of it. I haven't watched the whole thing. I should watch the whole thing. Because it sounded like he had some interesting things to say. Marty, he did the Halo music. Okay. Yeah, if it's the one I'm thinking of, I saw some clips of it, and it was interesting. It was interesting, at least what I saw, but I haven't seen the whole thing all the way through yet. I should do that. Christian, thank you for 20 months of membership. What chapter are you at in Wukong, Luke? Do you think this trend of games aiming for fun over difficulty / some message will continue? As for what chapter I'm in, I'm not that far. I'm like 3 or 4, because I mean, spoiler alert, I am reviewing Star Wars Outlaws, as Joraptor mentioned. So my plate is a wee bit full trying to juggle all of that. But do I think it's over? Like, I still think that there's a lot that's coming. I think that there's games in the works now that have been in the works for the last couple of years that will still see the light of day and will be baffling when we see them, because we're gonna be like, didn't you just learn this? Like, what are we doing? You know, I think there's gonna be more before it gets better. Just like with 2017, people forget, but 2017 was like the year of loot boxes. I don't know if you guys remember that, but like Battlefront 2 had such horrifyingly aggressive loot boxes and monetization. Disney had to step in and basically tell them to cut it out, because there were people calling for Disney's investors to like step up and churn over executives because they were potentially violating laws in like Belgium and all sorts of stuff. It's crazy. So like, even with that, in 2018 and 2019, there were still games coming out with loot boxes, even though that was then anathema. I mean, you could not do loot boxes and expect to get any sort of positive feedback from the gaming community. The gamers had decided that is not okay, but it took time to kind of flush out of the system of game development. So the same thing's going to happen with this stuff. If there really has been a shift in the industry where people are going to try to, like, I think pretty clearly Sony is making a shift and they're not pouring this much money into live service games. I think it's going to take a little while to flush out before we see it really change. Okay. But yeah, I mean, I personally hope that they start prioritizing fun first and then everything else second, because that's what video games are supposed to be. Cool. Pandas, thank you for the 5. I'm starting to think the Last of Us multiplayer game was actually good, but Bungie execs didn't want any competition at Sony and said it was bad. I don't know. I mean, because I think like Sony or Bungie probably created a report and then presented it to executives and did like a whole slideshow and was like, this is why we think the game won't make money, and this is why we think it doesn't work the way it is. We need to change this, this, and this. And honestly, I think it was just that there wasn't that much potential for monetization, and then they ran a quick calculation on how much it would cost to do new seasons and new motion capture and new cutscenes and stuff at Naughty Dog quality for the game, and they just decided this doesn't make sense. Like, you'd have to have this so heavily monetized to make the money make sense that it just doesn't work. Crusader, thank you for subbing on Twitch with Prime. Thank you. Mulas, thank you for the 10. Again, thank you guys so much for this, and then we'll get back to the topics once I catch up on these. Thank you for the 10. When you spend decades building studios that make you money from single-player games, win a generation, have the competition release their games on your platform, then throw it away for a game nobody wants. Yeah, it's, I mean, again, it just goes back to management and leadership. I don't really fault the individual designers and developers. People who worked on Suicide Squad, Concord, all these games, amazingly talented. It's the executives, I think, that are really to blame. Which is why, like, I've given Sefton Hill and Jamie Walker, guys I used to respect the hell out of. I've given them so much crap after Suicide Squad, especially when I heard that they left the studio before Suicide Squad launched to go and form their own studio. So it seems like they knew the ship was sinking. And then, just like the cowardly people aboard the Titanic that jumped onto the life raft, taking the seed of a woman and child, they did it selfishly so they wouldn't suffer the blowback by being at the studio they founded when the crap hit the fan. It's unbelievable. Like, they caused that game to end up the way it did. by the reporting from Jason Schreier talking to devs, they are the ones that caused it to be so disjointed because they were perfectionists who kept changing their ideas and opinions on how it was going to work and stuff. Like, it's their fault. There is no question whose fault it is. It is their fault. So yeah, I'm gonna tease them and mock them, and that's what you do. They destroyed their own studio, but it was one of my favorite studios ever. And for what? It's pathetic. What a waste. Nolan Dixon, thank you for the super chat. Does PlayStation Studios have anything upcoming? Ghost of Tsushima 2, but nothing else? They have that. I don't know if technically Death Stranding 2 counts as a PlayStation Studios game. I think it's technically published by PlayStation Studios, but I don't think it's a Studios game because it's Kojima Productions. Anyway, they've changed it so now it's a publisher too, so it's complicated, but they are working on Ghost of Tsushima 2. Allegedly, there's a new IP at Santa Monica. Allegedly. And what else do they have? Obsidian's not Obsidian. Insomniac doesn't have anything for a few more years. The Horizon big game, so the next Horizon game is like probably next year, and that's going to be a huge live service game. They are apparently spending like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars on that. Like all of Guerrilla Games, all the single player guys from Forbidden West, everybody is working on that game. Like it's huge. It's huge. And then of course Astrobot. I think Astrobot will do well. What's funny is Astrobot's probably one of their cheapest games, and that is probably going to end up selling way better than anything else they've done. I'm excited for it. It looks awesome. It just looks fun, you know? William, with Santa Monica Studios looking to make a new IP, what's your predictions for the next God of War? Where will it take place, release, etc.? Love from Sweden. Much love, my friend. Obviously, everybody expects the next God of War to be... I think that everybody expects it to be ancient Egypt, or just Egypt mythology, whatever, because that's apparently what they were going to do before they settled on Norse mythology. And you know why Cory Barlog said they went with Norse mythology? He said to subvert expectations, because everybody expected them to go to Egypt. And I get that. But as somebody that really wants them to go to Egypt, it was frustrating. And the thing is, Kratos has already been to Egypt. What? What, Luke? When? When did that happen? Apparently there's a comic. It's like the Fallen Gods something or other. Oh yeah, this is good. Listen to that. Oh man, it's so good. I wanted to find just a full copy of the comic, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do that without breaking like tons of copyright stuff. So during his exile, let's see, yeah. God of War Fallen God. This was a comic. It's a 4-issue Dark Horse comic miniseries written by Chris Robertson and illustrated by Tony Parker with coloring help from Dan Jackson. First announced in 2020. First issue was published March 10th of 2021. Fourth was issued in June of 2021. And it basically describes what happened between God of War 3 and God of War 2018. And as you can see here, during his exile, Kratos travels to Egypt. During his travel, he would constantly try to get rid of the Blades of Chaos, only for them to return to him, which drove Kratos insane. When Egyptian villagers saw the Spartan, they immediately flee and hide for fear of being killed. This shows that all of Egypt knows who Kratos is, as they've read stories about him and have learned of his notorious as a god slayer and destroyer of worlds due to having killed most of the Olympian gods and destroying Greece. Throughout his time in Egypt, Kratos would encounter a mysterious elderly scribe, and then both a talking ibis and baboon. These creatures are soon revealed to be the forms of Thoth, one of the Egyptian gods. Thoth would usually disappear from time to time and then reappear again to Kratos. And then they describe further what happens. But this, like, Kratos has already, according to the comics, it's already been to Egypt. So my guess is that they're not doing that, which is frustrating to me because I would have loved it. This is apparently early concept art when they were still brainstorming, and this shows early concept art of Kratos and Atreus in a setting with, I mean, you can see a sort of jackal. That's the word I was looking for. Jackal. You see a pyramid in the background, pillars. It's very, very interesting. It's a hippogriff. So they considered it heavily, but they released this game in 2018. And then in 2020, 2021, they released a comic book series that says Kratos has already been to Egypt. So either it would be a prequel to the 2018 game, or, which I think would just be confusing for most people, or Kratos would go back to Egypt and then there would be references to him having already been there, which I think would just, again, be confusing. So my impression is that they did this comic book series specifically to kind of clear out the need to go to Egypt. And I think because it's so kind of assumed at this point, they're going to do something totally different. Some people have rumored they're going to go to like Japan, or they're going to use the Chinese mythology. I don't know what they end up doing. I really hope they still go to Egypt because I'm an Egyptology geek. I just love the Egyptian mythology in general. I think it's not only visually very interesting and beautiful, but it's also just very different and very unique. And so I don't know where they end up, but I think they've signaled pretty heavily that they are not going to do what people expect, because I think they've already set it up to excuse why they're not doing Egypt. It's like, well, he's already been there in a comic nobody's read. Indian mythology could be cool. That could be really cool. It's just, you're always like, this is the thing with with this, and I honestly don't know. If Kratos went to like China and then starts massacring their pantheon, yeah, in their mythology, would they find that offensive or cool? You know? Because like, imagine if Kratos is like, I'm gonna go to Vatican City and I'm gonna beat the shit out of the Pope. And then he just starts like the final boss fights against Jesus. And then the Virgin Mary is like one of the secondary boss fights. And, you know, to power up all of the healing is, instead of like potions or something, it's like eating a communion wafer. Like, there's so many things you could do that would just piss so many people off. I think it'd be really funny, but I can understand why they might not want to do that. So I don't know if going to China would necessarily like make Chinese players more likely to buy your game. I don't know. Same with like going to India. I don't know if that goes over well. Norse mythology, you can have a game where Kratos kills like the Norse pantheon and everybody's like, yeah, that's kind of fine. That's cool. Whatever. You know, who cares? But I think going to a lot of other cultures would be potentially problematic, as they say. Yeah, the difference is those are dead religions. Yeah, I really think that that's kind of the, like, unironically, the problem is that if you're gonna go and engage with a religion people actively practice, then it's insensitive. If it's engaging with a religious tradition that has fallen out of favor and that nobody really practices anymore, then it's what do they call it? It's like, oh, you're honoring them, you know? Oh, we're educating people about it. It's like, what? But it's like the anyway, I could go down a diatribe of that, but sacrilegious one is bad, but like, you can tell if they were to go to like ancient Egypt or even with the Norse mythology, they're like, yeah, we wanted to really give the mythology, we wanted to treat it right. and respect these stories and these tales and stuff. But if they said the same thing about you know, a more modern tradition, people would perhaps justifiably freak out. But all of that to say, great question. I would love for it to be ancient Egypt, but I have a gut feeling they're going to do something totally different. But first, I think we're going to see Cory Barlog's new IP, which, I mean, I'm down for. It's about time we got some new stuff. Citizen Max, thank you for the 10. Again, thank you, Luke. Much appreciated. Love your ultimate critiques. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you. Spec Ops, thank you for the 10. Luke, if you can or have one of your people hit me up in Discord, wanted to donate a giveaway for you to do on stream. Oh, interesting. Send an email. All of my Discord stuff is like super duper locked down for reasons I can't really talk about. But if you go just to Luke at 28th Ave, 28thave.com, and send an email there, me and my managers will see it. Yeah, my Discord's like super duper locked down. Samaya, thank you for the super chat. The original God of War trilogy needs to be on PC. We might get it, you never know. Chad, thank you for the 15. After watching the Secret Level trailer, I think a show about the Fallen God comic would be more interesting than a live action God of War series. Yeah, I mean, I would love to see it. I would love to see it. I don't know if we'll ever get to see it. I mean, maybe the games just follow the comics. I don't know. But I would also love to see it because I think that's a really interesting story. Zelgun, thank you for the 5. Luke, have you made a video on the Until Dawn remake? I think it's strange we've been getting these. Other one comes to mind is The Last of Us Part 1. I just really think it's because a lot of these executives are like, it's just frankly cheaper to remake something people already liked. And it's just, you know, that the fans are probably going to buy it again. So easy money, easy clap, you know? I personally like would prefer if we got an Until Dawn 2, but all these companies are tied up doing other stuff. Supermassive, who did the original Until Dawn game, they're working on the new Little Nightmares 3, which is kind of like crazy, but still. Yeah, there's even a Horizon Zero Dawn rumored remake. Yeah, Cobain, I was hearing rumblings that was going to be announced like a while ago. So my feeling, and I don't have any other like stuff to back this up, but my feeling is that started to leak and they were being so roundly mocked on the internet that they basically put it on ice. I don't have any evidence for that. It's just my gut feeling is that it's probably basically done and they've just decided to like sit on it for later. Because I think if they announced it, people would like tease the ever-living crap out of them. Because honestly, like, let's be perfectly real. That game does not need a remake or a remaster. It just doesn't. Like, a decade-old game? Okay. But like 5, 6, 7 years, like, I don't know. And it was already very, very good looking, so. Oh, you're right. Concord numbers are showing now. Real quick, everybody in chat, nobody look it up. What's your guess for in-game concurrent players in Concord? And then we'll shift topics. Because we've been looking at it, we've wanted to pull it up. What's your guess? Okay, I'm seeing pretty varied. 9K, 7K, 2,500. About 350. 10K, 1,300. Bear in mind, this is just Steam. 9,000, 3,000, 2,100, 15K. Seen a lot of 3Ks, 18K, 1.2K, 10K. Well, fam. I would say I don't like saying I told you so to the people who said that I was being unreasonable about this, but I told you so. Yeah. Like, I didn't think it would be good. But like, we knew this was going to happen. We said, like, to Sony weeks ago, if you launch it, this will, like, it will die. Like, there's just not enough interest. And Sony basically just sent it out to die. And this is what it looks like. It's launch day. This is official launch day. This is the best it gets. Like, I don't know how else you could conclude other than that Sony's basically just trying to throw it away. I feel bad for the devs too. Yeah, I mean, it's what they needed. They needed Sony to come in and say, okay, you guys can have another year, 2 years. We'll remarket it, try to add some modes, try to add maybe a small story campaign. Could be 3 hours long, just like a little something to tie the little cinematic vignettes together. Just something. If they had done that, it actually might have stood a chance, but they insisted on shoving it out the door, and this is what happens. Like, but just if you ever feel like this is why I don't sympathize that much with PlayStation being like, well, we need to find ways to make more money. They spent, by some reports, $200 to $300 million for 186 players on Steam. Like, we thought Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was bad. And Suicide Squad peaked. Oh, wow. Suicide Squad peaked at launch at 13,000. But this is what happens. So, but Luke, you're being too mean. The games are actually going to do really well, and you're going to be laughing, or we're going to be laughing when you look stupid because the games are actually really good. I'm just saying, I don't have a good track record with this stuff because I'm like a psychic. It's because anybody with like 2 brain cells to rub together can look at this stuff months in advance and figure out that this is going to flop. Anybody can do it if you just look at it critically. Which is why it's all the more baffling that games like these get greenlit with hundreds of millions of dollars. We all saw that first announcement trailer and knew this was the end of the story. And yet nobody at PlayStation knew that. Yeah, Skull and Bones unironically has way more. Well, that's what you get for being a quadruple A game. Skull and Bones has like 700 players on Steam, and that's not counting Ubisoft Plus, which is the main launcher for them. So yeah, that's crazy. But let's finish catch up on these, and then we'll shift and actually talk about stuff again. Vendetta, thank you for 2 months. Luke, have you ever played Hunt Showdown? The studio has recently released the game with an updated engine for current platforms. I played it years ago. I have not tried it recently, but I remember thinking it was okay. It was really kind of clunky and buggy when I played it. But I remember it was like an interesting concept. I remember fighting some scary monster in like a barn. I remember doing that. But I haven't tried it in a long time. I should try it again. Samaya, thank you for that. I'm willing to empty my bank account for an Ezio Trilogy remake. I am willing to do this. I think a lot of people actually would be, unironically. Jack, thank you for the 5. Sony taking live service L's will never stop being funny. But once again, like Jim Ryan is the guy that did this. And Jim Ryan is not suffering any consequences for it. Jim Ryan left and retired and is happily doing his thing with millions. That's more what drives me crazy, is that like the people that are ultimately responsible for how bad these games turn out don't suffer any consequence. They might like, oh no, they shifted jobs or they retired with their millions. But like Jim Ryan, maybe he didn't qualify for like his extra bonus by retiring early. Maybe Sefton Hill and Jamie Walker, you know, when they left Rocksteady, they lost out on some bonuses and stuff. But that's hardly anything. Whereas like the people that actually were in the trenches day to day making these games, they get downsized. They lose their actual jobs and livelihood. You know, that's what really sucks. Because games like Concord and Suicide Squad and all those games, they're not awful because of like the individual gameplay programmer. They're not awful because of the guy that designed this quest over here. They're bad because the ideas are bad. The very concept is rotten. And that comes from the executives, from the designers at the very, very top, the game designers and the directors. And those are the guys that are always fine, even when things go belly up. Which just sucks. Just sucks. Hey Luke, TJ Miller's show Secret Level is actually making an episode about Concord. Do you think they'll not show it now given the game flop? No, I think they still show it. If they have a dedicated episode just to Concord, maybe that's part of their like late game marketing push, like Joe Raptor was saying on the podcast. Maybe the hope is that brings more players in. But again, the most potent and powerful thing in all of gaming is peer pressure. And if a game is considered uncool, nobody's playing it. And I think that Concord already is uncool. So I just don't think there's anything you can do. When will creators get to play Assassin's Creed Shadows? I mean, Star Wars Outlaw is about to launch. I'd guess sometime in September would be my guess. Maybe October. Jack, I had a super chat with you and Joe Raptor. There's a Secret Level episode on Armored Core 6 with Keanu Reeves. Yeah, I remember reading it. I think it was at the end of the show or towards the end of the show. We talked about it very, very briefly. But yeah, apparently it looks like Keanu Reeves is going to be in that. Did I say TJ Miller? Maybe. Let's see. And then that gamer bro, thank you for the 5. Have you looked at the cast of characters for Valve's Deadlock? On the surface, they look similar to Concord, but they're so much more appealing. I've not. I haven't dug into that at all. Just being honest. Tim Miller. Tim, not TJ. Tim. Okay, that makes more sense. But no, I've not looked at the cast of characters. I haven't really dug into it. I know that there's a lot that's been like leaked and stuff, but okay. Let's transition to this. I got distracted with all that, but thank you guys for the very generous super chats and everything. You have been absolutely crazy. Latavaus, thank you for subbing with Prime on Twitch. Renatal, thank you also for subbing with Prime over on Twitch as well. Thank you. The only game I'm looking forward to right now is Path of Exile 2. Been waiting for so long, says Takayoshi. Yeah, I mean, I'm tempted to try it, but I don't know if I have the strength because there's so much there. But okay, here we go. Ready? You ready? News segment! First things first, previews for Avowed dropped. IGN got to try it. Specifically, the one and only Destin, I believe, is the one that did this video. And Destin is actually a friend of the channel, pops in every once in a while to chat. And so let's see what they had to say about the game. My little backstory with this, just as a point of reference, I think the game is probably going to be one of those 8 out of 10s. I think it's going to be much smaller in scope than people expect. It's probably closer to like I don't know if they've said how long it is, but I would guess probably 25 to 30 hours. I don't think it's going to be massive. I think it's going to be pretty clunky. Combat's probably not going to be very good, but it's going to be one of those Obsidian games that you either love or you find it just kind of lackluster. There's not a lot of in between. So let's see what they said.
Avowed was a surprising delight to play for the first time. After a lot of questions about the shift in art direction from the teaser trailer, questions about the length, and a combat demo on the Xbox stage that had many asking if the game was earlier in development than expected, I'm happy to report that Avowed is feeling great, looking great, and offering a compelling story based on the early slice I got to play at an Xbox event.
To be clear, I do think that art shift did the game a lot of damage because people saw that initial reveal and were like, ooh, dark, gritty fantasy. This is going to be Obsidian's Elder Scrolls, but darker and grittier, even better. And then we saw the first reveals of it and it's like super vivid, colorful, artsy fartsy. And it was like, oh, like this isn't bad, but it's just not what I was expecting or hoping for. You know, it's why pivots like that are really, really dangerous.
Just a real quick note on this footage, all of it was provided by Microsoft, so I'm gonna have to do my best to edit this video while describing my own gameplay session, which looked really good, so I'm very confused as to why we weren't allowed to capture, but alas. My journey began just after the opening main mission in Avowed, and we've been sent on a task to find an expedition team. It turns out, as it often does in RPGs, that fate had other plans for them. Kai, our green-skinned companion, who just happens to be voiced by Mass Effect's Garrus Vakarian actor, Brandon Keener, keeps things lighthearted with quips and remarks about this new area we're exploring.
Well, better a flood than a cave-in.
The banter is welcome and sparse, as he only chimes in occasionally to make a quip, like when I pause to admire the view.
The bridge is out, but that looks like the way to the relic.
And the view is very pretty. Avowed has done a great job leaning into the art style the larger Pillars of Eternity series is known for, and had me stopping to admire waterfalls in the distance and moss-covered structures that set the aesthetic tone for this mysterious cavern we are diving deeper into. Avowed's world design is shaping up nicely too. As I dove deeper, I would discover walls that could be blown up to traverse a new path, or puzzles that would open a secret new area with a large chest if I threw my shock explosives at a few tucked away circuits I found by exploring off the beaten path. These puzzles have the added bonus of revealing coveted loot like a powerful ring that would offer some choice stat bonuses for my character. When I was
More than anything, this is giving me those, again, Xbox 360 vibes. You know, like it's not gonna be any game of the year contender. Probably it's not gonna win, you know, or get 10 out of 10s across the board or anything, but it's just gonna be like solid. If you're looking for something that's just a decent RPG offering, it's a good one to go at. And honestly, it's really bizarre, but it's games with the smaller scope that are not trying to be the big quadruple A whatever that I find more compelling right now. I don't know if I'm just burnt out on quadruple A fun like Skull and Bones. I don't know if that's just me, but I find this stuff much more compelling.
Wasn't exploring the depths of the oceanic cave, I had to swim through it, only to find myself facing off against the Zara, which I probably pronounced incorrectly. But these are lizard-like creatures with your standard human weapons like swords, shields, and bows, and they make for good fodder as you learn your beginning attacks. Combat in Avowed is much better than I had anticipated. You quickly become accustomed to using flasks to regenerate not just your health, but more importantly your essence, which allows the execution of your most powerful attacks. As the barbarian, I found myself stalking spiders in the caverns and plotting my attack. To begin, I use Kai's ability Fire and Ice via the radial wheel you access by holding down the left bumper, if you're playing with a gamepad obviously. Fire and Ice sees Kai teleport to the target and then unload a powerful bullet into the spider's face. Then I command him to use his area of effect attack, Leap of Daring, that has him slam into the ground and briefly stun everyone around him. During that time, I've been closing the gap, and as I was using two weapons, I first charged up my right-handed axe, which offers a powerful attack that inflicts frost damage accumulation to nearby enemies.
And presumably each companion has different little skills and abilities like that. So there's ways to really hone in different combos based on your playstyle. Okay.
After holding the right trigger to empower this attack, I managed to freeze my opponent just for a moment. Then I unleash more powerful essence abilities. First, I shout to push back the smaller spiders who are slowly surrounding me, and while stunned, I then select charge and ram my body with force into the biggest guy in the room, spider. Then I follow it up with a flurry of blows with the left trigger, which holds my nimble sword for a flurry of strikes that results in the dispatch of the last spider standing in the room. Later, I would return as a mage, which was described as the most difficult of the 3 classes available to use. Abilities for this character included an ethereal staff that you could materialize with essence, or projectiles that you could track your target with, and standard attacks that had you flicking your wand to and fro while the smaller spells came out of the
Flicking wands.
tip, damaging your target. Additional essence abilities included a spear that was a bit faster than the staff, as you'd expect, and several different projection or buff spells to help your hits land with a bit harder thud. My personal favorite, however, was an ability that had you snap your Book of Magic shut to send a wave of damage-dealing aura at everything around you. It just looked cool seeing a book wreck everything in the immediate vicinity. Make no mistake though, combat was also challenging. I was chugging potions with reckless abandon as I knew this was just a demo, but it was clear that you'll need to master the balance between your spellcasting, defense, and gear options for maximum efficiency.
Next one's mine.
Digging into the menus, I found that you could spec out your character with a second weapon set that would be accessed with the press of the Y button on the controller. The potential that something so simple offers had me excited because with one press you could access a significantly different playstyle. Combat felt clean, intuitive, and had a depth I didn't expect. I can't wait to dive into it more. And fortunately, the oomph your attack animations that many felt were missing from a demo on the Xbox stage earlier this year have seemingly been implemented. Enemies react how you'd expect them to when you slam them with a sword or blast them with a spell. Eventually on our journey, Kai and I would run into Caedmon, a young explorer who had managed to survive the Zarup assault. His friends from the expedition team weren't so lucky, however. After lamenting that he's never touched a girl and his looming fate wasn't fair, we were given several conversation options. Kai, we can't let this kid die a virgin. Can you help him? Give Caedmon a healing potion. Let's get you back on your feet.
It's about time we start exploring real world issues in gaming again, you know?
3, toughen up, kid. I'm not wasting my supplies on you. I, of course, picked the top one. Kai responded, not with that. Oh, you mean with healing him? He would then go on to make me offer my potion instead. Caedmon was back on his feet and offered us some advice that would help us continue our journey. But because I also wanted to try out combat as a mage, I got to see what happened if you always picked the bottom option. Toughen up, kid, my character shouted. Caedmon said something Kai called nonsense and pleaded with me to help him. I, however, refused to offer him the life-saving potion, resulting in his immediate death. Did I loot his corpse? You're damn right I did. It's situations like that which will make Avowed really stand out if they are plentiful enough. Can you really be that evil? Apparently so, and I look forward to doing a sane person playthrough where I don't murder everyone if I can avoid it, and a playthrough where I'm the biggest jerk possible because, well, that's kind of where the fun lies now, isn't it? The demo ended with an encounter where we met Sargamas. Sargamas is a gold-skinned deity-like creature who sent us to find an item and return it. But like our explorer friends from earlier in the demo, there were other plans afoot, and it wasn't long until we came face to face with the skeleton boss and a pesky skeleton priest that would heal the large group of enemies we were facing off against.
There's the relic. It can't be as easy as just grabbing it, can it?
No, Kai, it apparently can't be. Once in battle and realizing I was greatly outnumbered, I ran out of the room to survey the battlefield, and after taking out a few of the lower rank and file skeletons just outside of the priest's healing aura, I identified the one thwarting my plans of murder. Can you murder a skeleton? And I turned his bones to ice and dust. Just as I had cleared the grunts, I was finally ready to take on the skeleton boss with Kai, but just as I had him on the ropes, the power in the building went out for everyone playing the demo. It's okay though, because Avowed had made its impression. My doubts about it have faded away, and I'm left excited for its release in February. This small
It's probably good that you weren't actually locally capturing the footage then. So it actually ended up helping. They're like, yeah, we can't actually let you record your own footage because we're prone to rolling blackouts. Sorry.
slice Obsidian
was a
gave
little
us
funny.
the opportunity to play was a treat. And while it's a tiny glimpse, our 50-minute demo flew by in the blink of an eye. And that is always a good sign. For more on Avowed, check out this gameplay from Xbox that was released earlier this year. It's gotten a lot.
I mean, it's really interesting. I don't think it will be for everybody, but that's also true of most Obsidian games. You know, they kind of fit into a niche of people that are looking for really deep, usually role playing, and the gameplay is usually a little clunky. This actually looks a good bit better than it did even earlier this year and then last year. So it does look like they've made improvements. It's still gonna be clunky, and I don't expect it to be the biggest game or like on a AAA scale, but probably on that AA scale. And it's the kind of game that fits really well within a service like Game Pass, where normally you might sit out and wait for it to go on sale just because it's like, I'm not sure if I'm like that thrilled about it or excited about it, so I'll probably wait on the sidelines for it. But on a service like Game Pass, it just makes sense because you can try it for 20-30 minutes, see if it clicks with you, and then jump in if it does. So I wish them the best of luck while they finish it up and wrap it up, because it's slated for, I think, next year, early next year. They don't say, but if it does end up sticking to that date, I mean, it looks like they were making improvements and it's getting better. And the fact that he's saying it's getting more and more polished is good. I don't think it's been all sunshine and rainbows, though, in terms of the reception, though. There have been some mixed reactions to some of what they have shown. There were some people that felt that it played very, very flatly, that it was just kind of uninteresting and a wee bit boring. Let me see if I have this pulled up. Bookmarks. Maybe. No, not there. Yeah, Pen to Pixels. I haven't heard of these guys, but Pen to Pixels. Middling combat and generic level layout leaves Avowed feeling incredibly ordinary in this gameplay-centric demo. Whatever makes Avowed special either hasn't surfaced yet or simply isn't there. And I'm sorry. Yeah, if your lead for a preview of a WRPG is combat, you must have literally no experience playing WRPGs. Oh man, you're gonna get torn apart for this clickbait and stuff. And I don't. I'm not familiar with Pen to Pixels or Janet Garcia, but they say that they were underwhelmed by their session. Combat didn't feel good, abilities weren't interesting, and level design was leaned into an arena-like structure that limited your fighting options. And my biggest gripe is that I couldn't feel the weight behind my hits. Avowed's combat felt like sitting on a sofa that has a plastic cover on it. While I was given an hour with Avowed, the section I got to play had about 30 minutes of content, allowing me to try different classes. Since my session was so short, I have little to say about the narrative one way or the other. Maybe the story is Avowed's secret sauce. Maybe the gameplay hits with more time. Maybe I just need to find the right weapon or ability. Maybe the slice just isn't Avowed's best, but for now, all I can go on is what I've played, and I left with nothing to latch on to. Yeah, it seems like mostly it's complaints about combat. Obsidian's brand of humor definitely shines through here, but it's too soon to say how dynamic that humor will be. For now, it's the low-hanging fruit of uninspired sex jokes. I'm not ready to die. I've never seen or touched a girl. It's not fair, yells the first NPC I encountered. I'm then given the option to say, Kai, we can't let this kid die a virgin. Can you help him? Give him a health potion, or make a snide comment about not wanting to waste supplies on him. I selected a few different combinations during my playtime, and the only real difference is that he dies if you don't heal him, and you can loot his body. I do love to loot the dead, especially when they die at my hands, but that's pretty run-of-the-mill outcome. So they're upset that they made a joke about a virgin, him being a virgin. Make of that what you will. Make of that what you will. I think the game looks solid enough for what it is. And what it is like a AA RPG. And in that capacity, I think it's going to be probably pretty good. Pretty good. Not a masterpiece, not amazing, but probably pretty good. That's the thing, though, Ice, is I'm not sure if something can flop when it's on Game Pass and it's a first-party Xbox title. Like, it doesn't mean... Flop for Game Pass doesn't mean the same thing it does for games that are releasing in a more traditional way. Because for Xbox, it's about building out the portfolio, and it's hours played. And if there's a solid number of people that are interested in this, that play it through and play multiple times, then it's perfectly successful. Because again, all it's really about is keeping people subscribed to Game Pass and building out that library. Yeah, Outer Worlds was okay. This will be as well. That's kind of where I'm expecting it. Yeah. That's my guess. They want people to sub? Yeah, I mean, of course. But just as importantly as new signups, they need people to keep their sign up. They need people to stay subscribed. And that's how you do it. Bite Size, good to see you. Are you going to flick a wand? I mean, I think I might have to.
That's most definitely what's up.
So I'll be left with no choice. When did everyone turn on Outer Worlds? No, Lucas, it's not turning on Outer Worlds. It's just acknowledging that it was a solid game that had a number of problems. But that doesn't mean it's not worth playing. It's again, like the distinction. If it's like a 7.5 out of 10, critically, it still could very well be worth playing for a lot of people. It just means it's not like a masterpiece or anything. But I think a lot of people, and I mean, I think we're all guilty of it, we kind of get in this spot where we feel like if a game is a 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10, therefore it's bad. And it's like, no, that's a very good score. It should be very, very rare to get a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10, you know? But following along with this, there's been further drama with Avowed because there was an interview that Mr. Matty and Lord Cognito did with some people that are working on Avowed. And I'll just play the little clip about it. And then I'll follow up with why this turned into a wee bit of a scandal.
You could talk about this part right now, but I was curious about console performance.
Just to be clear, in case you're not familiar, Lord Cognito, Mr. Matty Plays, and then these are two devs that are working on the game.
Performance, specifically Series X part right now, but I was curious about console performance, specifically Series X. Can we talk frame rates at this time, or we're waiting a little?
I'm
not yet.
Probably not the best person to. Oh, sorry, talking off mic. I'm probably not the best person to talk about that. We can probably. We can probably.
Yeah, I mean, nitty gritty of it. Performance is one of the last things we figure out, right? We are core, and I think we've announced this elsewhere. We are core targeting 30 frames per second bare minimum. Like that's the expectation.
This is just, I'm just gonna point this out because I always find this funny when people say these types of things, but it's like, it better be like 30 FPS being the bare minimum. Yes. I mean, it's literally, this goes without saying, but 30 FPS is the minimum. Because can you imagine if they were like, yeah, 15 FPS, that's the minimum. Okay. You're like, of course 30 is the minimum. It's like when people are like, oh yeah, our game, we really think our game is good and people will like it. It's like, yeah, if you didn't say that, I'd be very worried.
You know, it's a first-person single-player game. You don't necessarily need that 60 frames, and that allows us to get a lot juicier with VFX and lighting and all this other stuff. So it's a trade-off we opted to make relatively early, and we're really happy with that. I mean, the game's running pretty smooth for how, you know, visually dense it is. And that was always our goal. But as far as, like, a greater understanding of performance spec, we're still figuring all that out. It's one of the last things you do. So, yeah.
Which, to be clear, is normal in development. They kind of set internal targets for what they think they can do. They get all the systems working, and then they start to polish it up and figure out final performance abilities and stuff. So fair enough. But people heard that, and they were like, oh, so 30. Furthermore, he says it's a first-person game, so you don't really need to bother with 60 FPS. I mean, I would say first-person games For me personally, it's more important to have 60 if it's first person than third person. Third person, I can handle 30 all day, every day. Totally fine. First person, if it's 30 frames, I often get motion sick, and it can like actually make it so I can't play the game. I've told you guys many times, I straight up can't play Doom even at high frame rates in first person because it makes me motion sick. And any other games like Starfield, trying to play that at launch on console at 30 frames, basically undoable for me. And I know it's like spoiled PC gamer, boohoo, cry me a river. Totally understand that. Very much a first world problem. But for me, just first person makes me motion sick. So hearing that this is like targeting minimum 30 is initially worrisome, because you're like, I mean, I'd really hope that we could do bigger and better than that. However, with this, they followed it up. Let me pull up the post. It's basically people are tearing it apart, but people have started quoting the interview and running with it. And they say Avowed runs at 30 FPS on X and S, confirms Obsidian. They say that that's the minimum target. There might be a performance mode that they add in later, but as of right now, 30 is what they're targeting minimum, blah, 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 which is true, I think, of literally any game in development today. And then people pulling up the Aaron Greenberg tweets from 2020 about the Series X and S, where he says 60 FPS will be the standard, but the architecture allows us to support up to 120. Once again, the impression is just that it's once more being held back on Xbox consoles, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. Now, again, to be fair, this is not a game you're playing for like the super twitchy combat or anything. So of all the games that could manage 30 and be totally fine, this is one of those. But again, it's just another feeling for a lot of people that this generation, we're not really stepping that far above, because this game, just to be honest, graphically doesn't seem like a leap forward, a generational leap forward. So you're like, okay, well then why is it only going at 30? Because a lot of people are okay if there's not a big visual leap forward if they get double the frames. But in this case, it's just 30 frames. Doesn't look like that big of a leap forward. But what I'd counter with is that this is Obsidian. Their games have never necessarily been the best lookers. That's just not what they do. You play Obsidian games for the mechanics, for the writing and stuff. You don't play it for the fidelity, which is why it probably, even though this is discourse that's being had right now, I think when the game launches, it's not that big of a deal. Same with like even Starfield. A lot of people talked about the 30 FPS limit for that game at launch, and then just kind of moved on and stopped talking about it when the game came out. Granted, there was a lot more to talk about when the game eventually came out, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. Let's see. Joe, thank you for the $2 super chat. Will Kingdom Come Deliverance eat Avowed with dates being so close? Will it eat it up? I think it'll eat up a lot of the discourse, because I think it's going to be much bigger. But it's also not on Game Pass. So I think there will be a lot of people that maybe don't have a lot of expendable income that'll try out Avowed first and then Kingdom Come later. But I would expect Kingdom Come to probably be better received on the critical side, and then I think it'll also be more popular on like YouTube and Twitch and stuff. Logan, Luke, baby darling, please watch Fleekazoid's Star Wars video. Fleekazoids? I mean, I don't recognize a Fleekazoid. I don't know. I'll pull it up in another excuse me. I'll pull it up in another tab. Our general policy is just to not watch stuff that hasn't been vetted by mods or myself, because, I mean, we're live streaming and you just never know. But I'll pull it up in another tab, and if it's something I think that could make an interesting reactor segment, we could definitely check it out. Let's see. But thank you for the super chat. Thank you, my friend. Chief Adam Gaming, thank you for the 5. Have they announced a price for Avowed yet? From what I've seen, it's not worth $70. Should be priced 40 to 50. I don't actually know if they've said Drew avowed price. I don't think so. I don't think they've said. Yeah, it just has a wish list. 5 months away. So they'll get there. I would expect probably 50. That's my guess. That's my expectation. And then Lucas, thank you for the super chat. It's like no one wants to like games anymore. The smallest cons are blown up to the max. And everything is controversial. No reason for studios to even try. I mean, it certainly feels like that sometimes. I just think people, what I think it's a reflection of is that gamers are upset. And when gamers are upset, they turn into hammers in search of a nail. And so sometimes they'll hit the nail on the head with something, I would say, like a Concord or a Suicide Squad, and they will destroy a game that frankly probably deserves to be destroyed because it's a bad game, because it's an overpriced game, blah, blah, blah. But when somebody is a hammer in search of a nail, it means sometimes you hit things that aren't actually nails, and you end up beating up on tons of stuff that doesn't frankly deserve it, or maybe it does deserve it, but for a different reason. And, you just end up beating up on absolutely everything. People calling for boycotts of games like Black Myth Wukong for various reasons, or you saw people turn on Dragon's Dogma 2, or they were previously really excited for Dragon's Dogma 2, and then they find out that they're monetizing it the same way that they monetized all the other Capcom games, and they turn on it. And you're like, wait, but you guys were just hyping it up. Why are you turning on this now? Or like Star Wars Outlaws. Initially, people super excited, and then they get upset because they see a trailer where the protagonist looks less pretty, I guess, than she did in the previous trailer, and they call it woke garbage. I'm like, no, or maybe the lighting was bad. Like, I just don't see it. Or like Fable. Fable, by most accounts, seems to be a very high production value, third person, like fantasy adventure game that's super, super high fidelity, and whether or not the gameplay depth is there, we don't know yet. But like that game seems to be what a lot of people were hoping for. But then they freak out because they think the protagonist looks too butch. And it's like, okay, well, pretty soon we're just going to stop getting decent games, full stop. Like, I understand if we're frustrated that we aren't going to have a customizable character. As far as I know, that hasn't been confirmed yet. But like, I could at least get that, okay? Like, I get it. But like, that's just a bad reason, in my opinion, to freak out about stuff. It's just like, again, they turn into hammers in search of a nail. And I think people can end up destroying things that they would otherwise have really liked when they do that. That's why I think it's important to just be more tactical and to appreciate games when they come. Next year, though, it very well could be much, much worse, because next year there's going to be so many games that I think will be polarizing in a lot of ways. I think it could get worse, and so time will tell, I guess. Anyway, Robert, thank you for the 2. Have you seen the Gothic remake demo from Gamescom? I don't think so. Not yet. I can pull that up in another tab if it's something we want to check out. This one from 2 weeks ago. Let's see, and then Lee Lee Breeley, thank you for the 1. Thank you for the super chat, my friend. And then Edgar, thank you for the 10. Can you blame the community? Starfield, Skull and Bones, Cyberpunk in the beginning, Fallout 76, Redfall, the list goes on. $70 is a lot of money. Not everyone has a lot of money. Well, that's why I think you just listed a lot of examples of games that were nails, that were fair in hitting. Like that made sense to go after those. But I think people then start to see shadows and things of perhaps even drama or scandals that aren't really there and freak out as a result of them. And part of it is we're in a very polarized time, and we're in a time where people are starting to search for scandals and stuff. So people will look for maybe the most clear example is people will look at anything, and if they think the protagonist isn't that interesting, or if they think the protagonist is, well, just frankly, if the protagonist is female, or if the protagonist is not sufficiently beautiful, then they'll freak out about it and then call it woke, and therefore it should be canceled. And I don't find that stuff to be very constructive or helpful. Just frankly, I don't think that's particularly helpful. Like, if you don't want to play Star Wars Outlaws, of course reviews will be dropping soon, but if you don't want to play Star Wars Outlaws because reviews are not where you wanted them to be, or because there's gameplay systems that aren't working for you or whatever, those are valid reasons as far as I'm concerned to not buy a game. To not buy a game because you think the protagonist isn't hot enough, like, that's a stupid reason to not buy a game. Especially when there's other stuff. It's the same thing like Suicide Squad. If you don't buy Suicide Squad because it's a bad game, totally get you. I agree. If you're not buying Suicide Squad exclusively because they didn't have enough scantily clad skins for Harley, that's a stupid reason to not buy the game. Okay? Because there's good reasons, like fair and justified reasons to dislike something, and then there's bad reasons to dislike something. Just because our conclusions are the same does not mean that we're both, like, we arrived there by equivalent means. Well, I guess I'm stupid. Yeah, but usually it's because, like, people are gonna latch on to one reason as, like, the symbolic reason that they're against a game, when in reality they probably just don't think the game looks very good. Which is more where I'm like, well, like, let's talk about the reasons that you don't think the game looks very good. Most people didn't want to play Suicide Squad because they didn't think that the game looked very good. And then they might also tease it for having really ugly skins and stuff, and like ridiculously stupid redesigns and gender swaps of characters. Like, that stuff, yeah, I think is all very valid to bring up. But if the exclusive reason why you're not playing the game is for something like that, it's like a little silly, in my view. Let's see. And then Lee Brayley, thank you for the other 2 super chats. Have you tried Inzoi's character creator yet? I have not personally tried it, but it seems really interesting. It seems like a lot of people are intrigued. It's in my recommended feed, but New World, who I think we previously did reactions to some of his content with Starfield. I know he's been doing some videos on Inzoi, which is kind of like a next gen Sims, is how you can kind of think of it. And I know some people are really eating it up. So I don't know. I'm not too familiar with it. I haven't dug into it or anything, but it does seem like people are eating it up, which is good. But I personally haven't messed with it. Diversus Connor, thank you for the 5. Big boy, please watch the new COD Zombies trailer. Anyone who enjoyed the original zombie story will be so happy. Goes for chat as well. Nolan North. Yeah, it seems like they're doing a lot of stuff. You mean the cinematic trailer? Is that the one you're talking about? That they like just dropped? That one? I have it pulled up. Yeah, from an hour ago. Yeah, okay. Then I have the right one. I got that pulled up. We can work through it real quick. I am falling behind. I got to get back and focused because my initial goal was to only stream for 2 hours today, and we're at 2 hours. And so I'm like, oh, I have a lot more stuff to go through. Let's see. Logan Strong Woman is more of a meme than Bald Space Marine. Strong Woman. Yeah, I mean, I think it's also a meme. Like, certainly, people bring it up, and it can be funny. Sean, thank you for the membership. Appreciate you. And then 955 AN86. We are angry because standards are not being met. They're actually being reduced. Hence why Baldur's Gate 3 was criticized by other devs. Well, I think that absolutely fair. It does absolutely feel as though standards have lowered. And I think that's also why games like Black Myth Wukong being so graphically impressive are so jarring and exciting to people, because it feels like, wait, all of these developers and publishers have said no, performance and graphics and all this is being extremely limited because of, you know, the difficult times we're in, or because of budgetary constraints or hardware constraints, whatever. And then other studios are coming in and showing, nope, we can do this too. We can figure it out, deal with it. And I think that that's just showing that it's more a matter of standards and what is being demanded of developers and studios rather than what is actually capable of being accomplished. But I mean, even Black Myth, the game does not run very well on console. I know Joraptor, he was like, the PS5 version on performance mode is beautiful. I don't know what version of the game he's playing, but it does not look beautiful on PlayStation 5 performance mode. Maybe if you're playing it handheld on like a PlayStation Portable, or I think that's what Portal, that's what it is, then maybe it looks fine if the screen's really small. But if you're playing it on a big TV or monitor, it looks like your whole computer's like smeared with butter. It's just bad. Like playable, but I would not say it looks good. It definitely should run better and look better than it does. Yeah. The blinking Logitech mouse pad. What? Oh, my Oh yeah, my mouse is almost dead. Thank you for letting me know. Appreciate you. Thank you. Thanks for the shout out. I'll have to charge it up. Anyway, let's transition to this real quick. We got to keep working our way through it. Talk about that. So we'll do this news segment. So there's been a little bit of drama in the world of Fallout because the original Fallout creator, Tim Kaine, has said, quote, critique of capitalism was never the point of the Fallout games. And if anything, they're about how, quote, war is inevitable given basic human nature. So what's Fallout about? War, nukes, consumerism, imperialism, how easy it is to misplace close relatives, all of the above. It's a debate that's raged for decades. No wonder Fallout is a pretty rich text as video game series go. And there's all sorts of messages you can read into the likes of Fallout 1, 2, and New Vegas. 14 years later, you can still click into any forum on the internet and find people arguing about which ending is best for the Mojave in New Vegas. It's Yes Man. But here's what it's not about, at least what it's not inherently about. Anti-capitalism. That's according to Tim Kaine, one of the series' original co-creators over on his YouTube channel. More specifically, Kaine spoke about it in the comments of one of his recent uploads, a video prosaically titled Capitalism, in response to a fan asking about Kaine's views on Fallout, quote, as a critique on the capitalist and corporate greed. And Kaine's response was unequivocal, quote, critique of capitalism was never the point of Fallout. The game went out of its way to mention that other countries like China were also behaving terribly. Let me see if I can find the full post. Yeah, here. Critique of capitalism was never the point of Fallout. In fact, the game went out of its way to mention that other countries like China were also behaving terribly. If anything, Fallout is a comment that war is inevitable given basic human nature. And again, this is like the guy, one of the creators of Fallout, He literally gets to decide what he wrote the story about, okay? Like, it's up to him to decide. So how do you think people have responded to this? Well, on the hub of rational discourse, Reddit, moderators in r/Fallout have apparently begun removing posts mentioning this comment from Tim Kaine. Just censoring it, being like, nope, ignore him. It's totally anti-capitalist. Shut up. They've actually removed it. I don't know how on earth you could justify that. Like, he literally created the thing that your Reddit is about, and you're gonna delete it. Like, what? How does that make any sense? It's insane. It's insane, but they're doing it. They're doing it. Yeah, it's a very Reddit moment. What's funny is, like, I really don't understand what the big drama is. I understand if people want to hold up Fallout as like, see, this is what happens when corporations like Vault-Tec get out of control, which was kind of the main premise of the show. I would say the show was very much like rambling and not rambling, very much a commentary on like capitalism when it gets totally out of control without any checks or balances or anything. You know, even a corporation kind of pushing for a nuclear war, even though it didn't really make sense in the grand scheme of things. It's like, so they want to start a nuclear war so people use their vaults, but why would that help them? So they can do experiments on people? Well, but who cares if the world is actually over? Well, then they'll run their own vault. Okay, is that still better than being a billionaire outside of the vaults? I don't think so. So the whole premise is that they need to keep the war on edge of collapsing into nuclear annihilation, because then people will still buy access to the vaults, they'll still make money, but without suffering the results of a nuclear catastrophe. So like there's a bunch of weird things going on with the show, but in some cases I think it was a little heavy-handed with how it tried to just be like, capitalism is bad. Meanwhile, the show is being produced by Amazon, which is like the biggest corporation. I don't think technically the biggest, but one of the biggest corporations in the world. You know, it's always fun to me when a piece of media is being produced like that. And then meanwhile, you know, people are just conveniently ignoring that it's being produced by one of the very entities that they're critiquing. Yeah, and then some people have just started to freak out. Gaming Circle Jerk, the series where the main antagonist is an evil corporation is, checks notes, not a critique of capitalism, you guys. You know, reading comprehension is really, really gone down the tubes. The YouTube commentator is Tim Kaine, so it holds some weight, but only really for the first two games. Bethesda leaned heavily into the capitalism theme once they acquired the series, and it's a major point throughout all of the world building 3 and onwards. Also, OOP seems to unironically support the Enclave, so that's something. Yeah, mean American isn't the rebel in Star Wars? Or you mean America isn't the rebels in Star Wars? Okay, whatever. Sees giant robots throwing nukes like footballs, spouting anti-communist propaganda. This game has nothing to do with capitalism. I mean, it's more mocking like that era of Americana more than anything, but whatever. Even if, like, I just don't understand why people have to be like, nope, he's wrong. Like, he created the series. He wanted it to be more about war, and that was the intention. It doesn't mean that Bethesda, as that one commenter alluded to, doesn't mean that Bethesda didn't change it later on. That's, I think, pretty clear. If anything, that's a frustration of a lot of people, is that Bethesda changed it after the fact. But I don't know why people are so pissy about it, frankly. To me, it's just, okay, whatever. Like, originally it was created based on this over here, and now it's probably morphed into something a little bit different. But that's the great thing about stories and world building and games and RPGs in general, is that you can explore those worlds and those stories and those characters, and you can come to conclusions about reality yourself. if I play Baldur's Gate 3, maybe my takeaway from that game is, you know what? We need to be more patient and kind and loving and understanding, and we need to help people first and foremost. Or maybe your takeaway is, actually, I need to go and pursue power at all costs. Maybe the meta commentary on the world of I'm trying to think of an example that makes even remote sense. I don't even know. Maybe Monster Hunter. Maybe the real purpose of a game like Monster Hunter is to teach us that we're all in this world together, living together, and we should make sure to appreciate nature as best we can. Or maybe the takeaway is, oh, you should kill all animals because animals are subservient to you and you are their master. So, oh, okay. Very different interpretations, which is kind of the point. And sometimes it's just a video game. Like sometimes it's just a video game. Doc, the guy himself says it means X, and the internet has its own opinion of what he really meant, even when he keeps saying, no, it means X. Maybe the biggest indictment of today. Well, it's also, I think there is something to be said that sometimes art forms or stories and things can grow beyond their creators. And at that point, it sort of begins to belong to the world. Like it's outgrown the original creator. Like at this point, I think like Star Wars has outgrown George Lucas. I think Harry Potter has outgrown J.K. Rowling. I think there's some things in media, pop culture, or whatever you want to call it, that outgrow their creators and become something more. And it's like, it's no longer what George Lucas wants to tell you Star Wars is about. Like, it's more what you interpret it as being about. Because it can change. What Star Wars is about as a franchise in 2024, I would argue, is much worse and stupider than it was 20 years ago. But that's my interpretation. You know, if you ask the people that are in charge of Star Wars now, they'd probably tell you Star Wars is a story about how the oppressed and the little guy is always stomped on by the imperialists and this and that. And it's like, okay, whatever. But 20 years ago, the story would have been something very, very different. You know, bring back Jar Jar Binks. Dude, can you imagine? Can you imagine if they announced that's the new thing? They're like, we're doing a spin-off movie. You remember Rogue One and Solo? Well, instead of Solo, we're doing Jar Jar. That's what we're doing. Dylan, thank you for the 2. There was a secret hunt in Space Marine 2's trailer today. Well, yeah, we're about to look at the gameplay overview that they just posted 3 hours ago. So we're going to look at that here in just a second for Space Marine 2. So thank you for pointing that out, Dylan. We'll pull it up here in just a second. Sean Moore, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships as well. Very, very generous. Very, very generous. Appreciate you for that. And welcome everybody else who got their memberships. Rodrigo, thank you for the 5. Have you seen the Gamescom stuff? 20 minutes of Dune Awakening gameplay was shown. Pretty excited for it. Yeah, there's a ton of stuff at Gamescom. Honestly, next year might have to go. If we have anybody in Europe watching, maybe next year we go. We do like a little meetup. That could be super fun because it seems like a good time. Seems like they got a lot of stuff. Next year's going to be so crazy. I think it's going to be a good time. Brian Tureau, thank you for the 2. Enjoy this $2. Use it in good health. I will, my friend. Thank you very, very much. Appreciate you. Commander Show, thank you for the 5. Luke, any thoughts on Concord being part of the secret level show on Amazon? It's bunched up with the greatest. Feels like a moped in a car show. That's funny. I think Joel Raptor on our podcast the other day was right. I think Sony probably paid a crap ton of money to get it lumped in with God of War and Bloodborne and all that stuff. They might even get their own episode, which it seems like they probably will, because they had PlayStation Studios or whatever as a logo, and then they had Concord as its own logo. They didn't have the God of War logo as far as I remember. Maybe they did, but they had PlayStation and then they had Concord. So I'm guessing they paid a crap ton to get Concord in that show, and it's kind of like their idea for a big meta marketing push where like, ooh, people will see the stories of Concord in that episode and then they'll go and buy the game And I don't think it's going to do anything. I think it probably launches and is whatever, like, but time will tell. Oh, they're up to 611 players on Steam charts. Wow. That's pretty funny. Man. Again, the old clip we saw of Lawbreakers. I wonder if I can just pull up that. She mentioned that Lawbreakers had dropped like 90%. Lawbreakers. Yeah, Lawbreakers. Now it's just dead. It's fully gone. But this game peaked at 7,500. And yeah, it's dead. Yeah, this was the actual release. That was during one of the betas. Their beta went there. Their full release had 3,000 players. And then it died. And they are at what, a sixth, a fifth of the same total player base? Like, uh-oh. So, again, I think we all know how that's going to end. Let's check out Space Marine 2 real quick. Let's do that. There's a Lawbreakers revival project going on in which the fans got access to the dev kits and are now hosting private sessions, all with the approval of Cliffy B. Really? Oh, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. Interesting. Sicario, thank you for the 5. Is there any part of generative AI that you enjoy and think is healthy for game dev? I mean, like I've alluded to before, just organizationally, something like ChatGPT has been really helpful for me, and I imagine it could be helpful for other people. Like something as simple as you write out a bunch of dialogue, and then you copy and paste it all in, and you say, hey, can you just organize this in consistent formatting? And then it'll just do that. Or if you have a spreadsheet and you want to use something like ChatGPT, hey, can you combine these 3 spreadsheets into a single one where each of these stats have their own columns and stuff? And it'll just do it in 20 seconds, whereas it would have taken you an hour or 2 hours before. So stuff like that is just greatly improves efficiency. And yeah, some occasional help in coding could be useful. So I think there's a lot of uses for it. I think where people get particularly upset is at the idea that it's going to replace like concept artists and it's going to replace like quest designers and story writers and stuff. And I think that's totally fair. But I think in terms of just increasing efficiency, there's a lot of uses for it. Yeah, the problem is that AI means so much. Like so much. There's so many different things that are getting the AI tag nowadays, where everything from something like Midjourney for image generation or DALL-E for image generation, that's AI. But then also ChatGPT organizing spreadsheets is AI. But then at the same time, a procedural terrain generation in an Unreal Engine 5 kit is also considered AI. So it's being used so widely that it doesn't really mean anything anymore, you know? It's basically just a buzzword. Thank you for that, Mr. Banana. PC game article on it. Oh, and then he's trying to get Nexon interested too. Interesting. So Nexon owns the rights to the game, and they would have to approve the revival of it. Dude, if that game actually came back, I mean, that'd be absolutely insane. Can you imagine? I don't even know what I'd do. That's crazy. But they should. I mean, if people are interested, just try it. Anyway, let's talk about this real quick. Right after Kinomansky, thank you for the 10 months. Ooh, baby. With journalists, game critics becoming less and less relevant, do you think Metacritic should add YouTubers' review scores? Can you do new segment as Batman? Oh, I can try. I do think that there should be like YouTubers lumped into Metacritic, but it's also tricky because not a ton of YouTubers give a clear like number score for various reasons, mostly that they think it's just not that productive. So you could introduce that, or you could just do simply like, you know, Rotten Tomatoes where they have certified fresh, where it's basically a recommend or not recommend. You could do something like that. But I do think people tend to rely more on YouTubers nowadays for reviews and interpreting whether a game is worth getting than they do looking at something like, you know, name any random game publication you've never heard of. So I do think that they should do that. And then as for new segment. Okay. Space Marine 2 gameplay overview. Let's check it out. Put on your sunglasses. The hair is bright today. Let's see it.
Ready to make landfall. Here with more, please welcome Saber Interactive's Chief Creative Officer, it's Tim Willits. How you doing, Tim?
Thank you for having me.
Well, are you having a good Gamescom so far?
This has been a great Gamescom, and the reception on the game has been great.
Amazing, wonderful. We got some questions for you. You got the first one in your love.
Yeah, I'd like to know, because this is a follow-up to the game that released back then, and knowing that there's quite a following to the Space Marine universe. I mean, the game itself, that the IP that the franchise is based on, has been ongoing for many years. Yeah. What's it like working with a team like Games Workshop to bring something like that to life?
Nice.
Yes, it's been a great honor for us to work with Games Workshop and to also work on the in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. You know, this universe was created 45 years ago, and the influence that it has had on video games that we've played for decades, I don't think many people realize. You know, working with Games Workshop, you know, we worked hand in hand on the story, the setup, the Space Marine chapters, even like the enemies that you fight. So it was a great collaborative effort.
Yeah, no, I can totally imagine. And because of that, with 45 years, you say, of history, I imagine it's quite a challenge when it comes to making a sequel to a popular game for core fans who've been with you the whole time, but even trying to entice new folks who, like myself, I haven't played the first Space Marine game. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about, you know, what does this mean for those who have played for ages or maybe uninitiated to 40K?
Yes.
Man, it's just looking good, isn't it? It's looking pretty good. Again, level design is like pretty very, very straightforward. Very 360-esque. Don't expect anything like particularly crazy, but I don't think that matters because I think the core, like fundamentals, are good.
That's a great question. It was definitely a challenge to create a game that both respected the franchise, respected the fans, but also was approachable enough for people to play it. Now, I know you said you haven't played Space Marine 1.
Please don't hurt me, Tim. I'll get round to it.
That is totally fine. Yes. Don't worry that, you know, if you haven't played the franchise, jump into Space Marine 2. If you're just a fan of over-the-top, in-your-face action games, this is the game.
That sounds like a bit of us.
Right, that's good. But for the fans that have been there all along the way, they played the originals, how have they helped, you know, your community basically in focusing your development team to make sure the sequel is just right for them too?
Yes. The community, the Warhammer 40,000 community is intense. It's millions.
Intense is putting it lightly, huh? It is a group of people that are crazy. They are crazy. In fact, I think I actually still probably have this poll or this bookmark. Let me see if I can find it. Oh man. No. I really hope I can find this because it was so funny. Okay, the search for bookmarks is just not working apparently on Twitter, X, whatever right now. So instead I'll search it this way. Oh, 'cause Nope, I don't think I'm gonna be able to find it. Damn it. Or was it CIA? Was it not the FBI that investigated it? Okay, I can't find this damn thing. Apparently it's just not working. Bummer. Bummer. Oh, it would have been so cool to talk about it. Anyway, there was like a story that launched years ago, or that came out years and years and years ago, of, I think it was the CIA or the FBI that investigated and looked into like RPG fans, tabletop RPG fans, and their conclusion was that they are mainly a group of unsocial or like antisocial recluses who tend to be loners and are very, very committed to their things. They spend a lot of money and their hygiene tends to be quite poor, which I just find really, really funny. So us, yeah, it was funny. Everybody, it was shared to like the Warhammer subreddit or something, and it was like, I feel personally attacked, but also fair, which was just, it was like, I love the idea of like the government investigating tabletop war gamers, because I think that's what it was. Is it was like, it was specifically war gamers because they were interested in whether they were like skilled enough to be useful in some other pursuit or something. And they just decided like, nope, they are very smart. They're very intelligent. They tend to be a bit of loners, and they also have poor hygiene, which is just like the idea of somebody working in like an FBI office writing that up is really, really funny. It's just funny.
Strong.
Anyway.
And well, they love it, right?
They love it.
Passionate amount of love, yeah.
Yes, and so working with Games Workshop, they have their community team, they have their expert writers, and we have talked to the community. We made sure that we are delivering the game and the experience that really is true to the franchise, and to really make you a true Space Marine, to that power fantasy of being the most badass soldier in the universe.
I mean, have you seen the sort of stuff they're up against? It's crazy, right?
I was going to say, looking at it, that was going to be my next question actually, is how is this love and this influence reflected in the action and the pace of the game that we're looking at here? Because this looks, well, you said it's quite intense. It looks really full on.
Yeah.
Yes. The key to Space Marine 2 is both the complex melee system and the range combat. One of the things that you will see is, Titus has to use everything in his arsenal, from blocks to hits to dodges to grabs to glory kills.
Nice.
It's really a very visceral, intense, and in your face.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks so good. So do all of them have different kind of that up-close melee ability that we just saw as well? I know there are multiple folks you can play.
Yes. Yeah. So one of the great things about the game is we have a campaign where you play as Titus, and he has two squad mates whom the computer can play them, or your buddies can play with you.
Oh, fun, okay.
Yes. Great. And then we have a PvE campaign where you can play as your own Space Marine.
Ooh.
And you can customize your Space Marine. You can be the chapter that you want. You can upgrade.
That's great.
And then that also leads to PvP. So you can go head-to-head with other humans playing as Space Marines.
Oh, that sounds good.
Absolutely.
That's a bit of...
I appreciate that they're representing a probably pretty sizable number, if not the majority of players that will be playing Space Marine 2, which is people not really familiar with it too much. But I would have loved it if they could have gotten some actual like Warhammer fans to help with this interview. Because I'll be real, ever since I made like a Luke Stevens live clip mentioning that I was interested in this and that I'm a Warhammer fan and stuff, they've been in contact with me, like actively talking and sharing updates and stuff. Like they're very in tune, and I think it's because they know like, okay, this is like an actual fan, and if we can win him over and if he likes the game, then we're in for a real treat. And he'll be an advocate for us, which is true. If I like your game, I'll tell people that I really like your game. But I think probably the majority of sales will probably come from people that are more casual fans, or people that are not too familiar with like the tabletop or anything like that, which is totally, totally fair. But I would have liked to see like one person at the table who maybe is not familiar with it, and then maybe another Henry Cavill type person who is a fan that could talk about it and ask for some of those specific questions and stuff. Yeah, but you're a Thousand Suns player, so yeah, but I also have like a broader problem because I play a lot. Like you can see, we fixed the camera. I think this is working now. This one? Nope. Hold on. Hold on. I have to reset it. Deactivate. Activate. Maybe. Hey, yeah. And it's like super overexposed. There we go. I like that. So like all of this is just filled with Warhammer stuff. And then each of these cases are filled with more. It's like this is just filled with orcs. And stuff. So like I have a problem. I don't just play Thousand Suns. I play a lot. We got orcs galore, chaos demons, got necrons. I got lots. Funnily enough, the only thing I don't really have are Space Marines, which is just a different thing. But yeah, I got a lot. I got a lot. So I understand I'm in deep. I acknowledge that. I admit that. But still, I would like some representation of the giga nerds like me in these interviews.
I like that. And there's the range stuff that we're seeing.
Yeah, see, this is what happens when you guys send super chats. Spends it all on toys. I will have you know, ever since I got a 3D printer, I have not actually gone and gotten. I don't think I've had to buy anything with Warhammer. I still have a pile of shame that I'm kind of working my way through. But like with the 3D printer, I've been able to print some stuff that you either can't find or sold out everywhere or whatever. Like even these. I forget what these guys are called. But they're little bitty beasts of Nurgle, I want to say. And they just have like crazy powerful abilities to basically just never die. They regain health and all sorts of stuff. But like those are things where you'd have to pay probably $60 for those, or you can just find somebody who sculpted a model online and just 3D print them yourself. And just do that. Yeah, they're kind of like little Jabbas. They look like little Jabbas. So I think if you're into Warhammer and you're interested, do that. Same thing with like changelings. Like these things are so stupid. Look at this. These guys, to buy them, you got to spend like, I think they're $50 for one. Like $50 for one little dude. And that's all he is. Just a little guy. It's like a blue changeling or whatever. And they're stupid expensive. Like absolutely ridiculous. But if you 3D print it, this costs like what? 7 cents or something? Granted, you had to buy the 3D printer. But I also use the 3D printer to 3D print like stuff for our D&D campaigns. Which I've shown some of you guys this stuff before, but like this is a guy, not painted yet or anything, but this is a guy that the party's going to run into in a future session, which is like a big ass, I'm blanking on the name of them, but you know when they have like a harvest and then they put, it's not a Burning Man, it's like a, what is it called? I'm blanking on the name. But anyway, there's a lot of really good stuff. I recommend if you're interested in Warhammer, find a friend who has a 3D printer or get one yourself. They're cheaper than they ever have been before, and it's amazing. Wicker Man. Yes, that's it. Luke should do a night live stream of a Warhammer campaign. We could unironically do like a little vlog type thing for like of a Warhammer game or something. That could be fun. But anyway, point is, I have a problem. However, I have resisted the problem for a very long time, and now I pretty much have everything I need. I have too many armies at this point. I have too much to sink my teeth into, so I don't need to buy any more. But I do know, I'm not calling out any names. I do know a guy though who's straight up, and I've teased him about this before. It's really funny. Okay, so it's not like I'm saying anything behind anybody's back, but I have somebody I know who's probably gonna see this, who will, like, if we go out to eat or something, he's like, oh, I'll cover this on my card and you can just give me cash for your half. I'm like, okay. Why cash and not like Venmo or something? And it's because, like an actual crack addict, he wants to use the cash to go and buy Warhammer figures without, like, his wife knowing. Which is really, really funny. And I mean, that's just Warhammer fans for you, you know? It's because it's like, oh, I really want this thing, I really want that. And yeah, I see what he's doing. I see what he's doing, you know? So I've teased him about it before because it's very funny to me. But anyway, yeah, again, it's like if you just replaced Warhammer with like hard drugs, it would sound the same. It's like, yeah, so we'll do things, then he wants cash so that he can go buy hard drugs without his wife knowing. But in this case, it's actually just Warhammer figures. You know, it's very, very funny. Shiro-san, thank you for the 5. Speaking of Lawbreakers topic, have you ever discussed the City of Heroes Homecoming server and private servers in general getting a license to run? I don't think we have talked about that, but that is a crazy story. And talk about game preservation, like it's, no, it's that could be something interesting to discuss. So I'll pull that up. Maybe if I find a good way to make a topic out of it, we could do that. Because it's an interesting discussion. Edgar, thank you for the 5. You freaking nerds! Why are those so expensive? I knew you were rich. I mean, I've tried very hard not to like hide the fact that I do well for myself. You know, it's actually funny because I have a theory that some streamers and stuff will continue using really crappy setups and like bad cameras and lights and film in a bedroom. A lot of the time those bedrooms they film in are not actually their bedrooms. It's just a bedroom that looks like it would be, and it's basically a set to make it like relatable or whatever. But I have a theory that a lot of those big top streamers who are like multi-millionaires, they do it specifically to seem like relatable, that they're not that rich, so they get more subs and donos and stuff. Maybe it's just pure like conspiracy theory, whatever, but I get the impression that maybe that's it. Asmon, I don't know. I think Asmon honestly does just kind of live like that. I think Asmon's just king of the neckbeards and he's just going to do what he's going to do. But I think like XQC, he also like flexes his money, but there's also a lot of other big streamers who never upgrade their stuff, and I find it weird. And even Speed, to like a certain extent, will do that too. Kai is very upfront, like he makes a lot of money, but Speed also, I think his setup is always really janky. But I don't know, maybe it's just coincidence. Maybe they honestly just don't upgrade their stuff because they don't think they need to. I'm not sure. But yeah, Warhammer is stupid expensive. Just being perfectly clear. I don't know what Actman's worth. Any of those websites that tell you estimated net worth are insane. Like they're so wrong. I saw one that said I was worth like $3 million in something. I was like, I would love to be worth $3 million, dude. Like, Jesus. I wish, you know, one day I hope to be a millionaire, just 1 millions, but we're not there yet. We're grinding. We're working on it. Anyway, yeah, the price was why I stopped buying. Yeah, it gets egregiously expensive. It gets really insane. But that's why, like, buying secondhand through eBay or something, or if you can get a 3D printer, that's a great way to do it. You're worth 3 million to us, Luke. Well, that's the problem. Is it's like, yeah, Luke would be worth 3 million if he didn't spend 95% of his revenue on Warhammer toys. No, it's like if you considered the value of like the YouTube channel, maybe you could get there. Maybe you could be like, oh, the YouTube channel's worth $3 million, so therefore you're worth $3 million. I guess you could do that and say that, but it's a bit of a stretch because it's not like I can sell the YouTube channel for $3 million. You know, it's like it's not realizable. You know, I couldn't realize that gain or that worth. You know, it doesn't work that way. So, anyway, Jack, thank you for the 2 Warhammer this time or this stream or next or I can't read. Jack, thank you for the 2 Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 gameplay this stream or next. I am not actually sure how far we'll get into it, but I will try. Clem, thank you for the 2. As a Tyranids player, I feel offended and excited. Oh, good. Good. Rupert, thank you for the 5. CIA recruiting war gamers to be military advisors in Africa. Is that what it was? Yeah, I mean, the CIA also spent something stupid like I think it was like $20 or $30 million investigating claims of psychics to basically conclude that they don't work. It's like, where's that money? You could have given me $29,999,999 and saved money, and I could have told you the same thing a lot faster too. Tell you what. Anyway, continuing on.
Being here now, yeah.
This is the thing, like, the action is very intense, and at times the number of enemies can get quite overwhelming as well. It's not just about the fact that you're dealing with someone far away, maybe someone up close, because I can deal with one dude.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
He's fine with that.
Tell me about the sort of technology you've had to develop to allow for there to be so much going on the screen at once.
Yes, so the key critical component of this experience.
That was sick.
Yes, that is an awesome glory
we
kill.
We just need to quickly go, nice job, Tim. Like that, Tim.
Yes. So the Swarm engine. The Swarm engine was developed by Saber Interactive in World War Z, and that has been developed, and now we're in Swarm Engine 2, where we can bring massive amounts of Tyranids, never seen before, and they just come at you and they break apart. And every one of those Tyranids, based on our new AI director, starts thinking, and they're thinking about killing you. And it is an over-the-top war, like epic, like never seen before, epic war, where you are the main fighter.
And is this just going around in the skybox? Because I don't know about you, Henry, but the idea of like loads of Tyranids flying at me sounds kind of fun. Is it something?
Wait, what did she call him?
I don't know about you, Henry, but the idea of like loads of Tyranids flying.
Tyranids. Uh-oh. Sorry, Clem. You're going to get triggered.
At me sounds kind of fun. Is it something that you can see from a distance, or are they like coming at you?
Yeah, they're much scarier.
They're just Tyranids.
Two in it. Aka awkward. It's okay if you don't know the name of the I guess faction. But to mispronounce it twice is really awkward. Well, just a little awkward. Granted, I've mispronounced stuff a lot. I'm kind of the king of it, but it is funny when like the main faction you're fighting are Tyranids. There's no U, it's like a Y. So it's just a little awkward.
Yes, especially when there are hundreds and hundreds.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
does he try to correct her? Does he do like one of those awkward little, so the Tyranids, wink, does he do that?
They come at you with everything, and you need to use every weapon in your arsenal. Every move that you practice to stay alive. You can see here where the Tyranids are
Tyranids. Does she?
To stay alive. You can see here where the Tyranids are moving into the battlefield, and they're just on their way. It's nuts. And as they approach, they immediately break out into individual units that have their own AI.
I was going to say, how does that work with the swarm? Are they all on a set path, or as soon as they land, is it just like the fastest route they can get to you and start messing you up?
So our new advanced AI director coordinates the battle.
Nice.
So the swarm can come from different directions. The swarm kind of like breaks apart, like when they separate. That can happen at different times, based on the state of the battle, based on what you're doing, and based on what your Space Marine buddies are doing.
Tim, you've done it again. Did you see that one?
No, I'll watch
that
that
one
one.
was sick. And watch the show back.
that one was-
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. I'm so distracted. This looks so good.
You just said that they assess what the like state of the battle is.
Yeah.
So does that mean they're also reactive? And if they're thinking, oh, he's got this lane covered, let's direct some around here to sort of flank. Is that the sort of thing you're talking about?
Yes. So you are a Space Marine. You're a Primaris Ultramarine. Okay. But we can't make the game super easy for you.
Nah.
So you'll feel like, yeah, I'm bashing these Tyranids, but then they overwhelm you. And then the AI director can bring in more advanced units from different directions. You know, they can flank you. So the ultimate goal is to feel like you're not going to survive, to feel like this is you're going to lose, but you make it and you win, and it's a great feeling.
It's like at every opportunity you're just about to like close the gap, feel like you're getting ahead, and then you guys are just like Sebulba, just chucking a wrench in my engines, and I'm falling back again, and it's all over. Got to work from scratch again.
Yes.
Crazy.
Yes. It's very
Good
intense.
reference, Henry.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Very on
Cheers.
brand for you. I like it. Yeah, that gameplay we were just looking at, by the way, the sheer size of it. Yeah, here we go. Look at this.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we can see a little bit of the swarm here. Maybe.
Yeah, that's a flying. They're flying Tyranids. You know, in this particular battle, you know, they're attacking these huge kind of radio towers, and you just like destroy them as you try to survive, because they start landing. Different units start landing on the same platform that you're on. And
I think this is the same demo that I played at Summer Game Fest, because we did a very similar thing to this. Well, but I don't think it was the chains. So maybe it's different. If it's different, there's at least 2 missions that I've already played, and the game's not been out, where you defend large rectangular objects from swarms of Tyranids. I think it's going to be similar in style to 360 games, so it's probably going to be pretty repetitive. You're going to do a lot of the same stuff over and over again, but again, if the fundamental gameplay is fun, I think that's fine.
And as you can see, there's lots of ways that you can go about killing bad guys.
Yeah, not for you, mate.
So it's not just mindless violence. There is also quite a lot of like objectives, mechanics to be following as well.
Strategy, yeah.
Yes. So if you played the first one, and I know you haven't, that's okay.
This is homework to do. I understand.
This is our melee system is much more advanced. It's much deeper, and our range combat system is also much more advanced. So I like to call it the dance of death. Where you have your melee, your blocks, your reactions, your critical hits, and then you can also pull up your ranged weapons, take out enemies from a distance, and you really need to learn how to use the tools in your arsenal of death to win the battle.
And it's not just the people right in front of you. I know we're taking things off the chain here, the Tyranids, but the chain's integrity in the top right corner. So I'm clearly guessing that if you let that get to 0.
Yes.
So good for you.
Mission over for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely. Were there any other technical developments that really plussed up Space Marine 2, by the way?
This is our own technology.
Nice.
And when you build the technology for a game, you can make it awesome. You know, we talked about the swarm. We talked about the AI director. It's crossplay.
No.
Yes.
Ooh, I love that.
So you can beat up your buddies.
I will.
You know,
Really will.
You're first, by the way.
Yeah, I can tell.
Yes, and then you can play solo, you can play PvE, and there's a full-fledged PvP mode as well. So it's a very dense game. It's as dense as a Space Marine.
Oh, I love it. So give us some more juicy information. When can we actually get our hands on it?
So Space Marine 2 comes out September 9th. If you pre-order it now, you can play it early.
Yes,
It's right around the corner.
Wow.
We're testing the servers, making sure that the infrastructure can survive the Tyranid horde that's
Nice.
coming. We feel good. The reactions to the gamers here playing it's great. We're excited, and we want to get it out the door.
Amazing.
Thank you, Tim.
It sounds like you're super busy. We'll let you get back to work on getting on the horde. Thanks for stopping by.
Run out of time, Tim. Crack on, bud.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it, though. I'm definitely playing.
Okay, that's just mean. This here reminds me of them cheap artificial banana sweets. She seems very nice. She seems very nice. And the energy is good. That's why you have somebody like these hosts doing this. It's because you need the energy to hype it up and get people excited. So I think that's fine. She did well. Having said all that, I think the game looks really solid. Again, I don't think it's going to be like a 10 out of 10 masterpiece. I don't think it's going to be received like that by the media. But I do think people who are interested in Warhammer, who like the look of just a bloody, messy chaos, which the game is built around. I think they'll have a great time with it. So I also expect that to do really well. It's one of the top wish listed games on all of Steam. So I think it's going to pop off, sell many copies. Not like a Black Myth type response, but I do expect it to have hundreds of thousands of players when it drops. So that's my expectation. But I'll be keeping an eye on it. I'm very excited because it's going to be big. There's a lot there. There's a lot there, especially in the PvE and then the PvP. There's a lot. So, yeah. Okay. Me and my friends definitely buying that. Yeah. No, I think a lot of people are going to jump in. Banana Blitz, thank you for the 5. I actually recommended starting out with Kill Team because you can buy all the stuff you need for like $40 max to play. I have thousands of 40k models. I'm worse. Oh, geez. Thousands. I mean, I have a lot, and I still think it's in the probably few hundred models if you count all the little stuff. So it's mainly orcs. Like, I have a lot of orcs. Orc boys. And then Russell, thank you for the super chat. Saw Alien Romulus, glad they didn't forget Prometheus and Covenant despite being mid. This franchise may officially be back after Prey and Romulus' success. Yeah, I mean, it seems like they're actually getting their feet under them once again, so that's really good to see. Because they just went back to the fundamentals. Like, hey, we don't need a $200 million budget. We can just focus on the basics. Go back to practical effects and just focus on making a solid game, or a solid film. Like, it doesn't have to be this like huge big budget. I think honestly a lot of this stuff goes back to like Marvel. Marvel made a lot of media executives think that the more you spent, the more money you would make. And so it's like, oh yeah, we just make 15 of these movies and each one has a budget of $200 million. And they each are making like $1 billion a piece. So that's great. And then that infected all avenues of media where they thought, okay, well, $200 million games will also make more because budgets, like the bigger budget the game is or the film is or whatever, the better it'll do. And that's pretty clearly not actually the case. Maybe not thousands, but got to be like 500. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, across everything, I probably realistically have maybe like 150 to 200 models if you count all the Zangors and boys and all that. So yeah, you're right. Let's touch on Crimson Desert. Well, first, actually, let me touch on Black Myth Wukong. Let me do that first. News segment. Black Myth Wukong has officially passed 10 million units sold across all platforms. 3 million concurrent players across all platforms as well, which is crazy. Peaking at 3 million concurrent players globally. 10 million units sold. It's crazy. That is so much. That is so much. Again, like Hogwarts Legacy was the biggest game of 2023 with one of the biggest IP in the world. And over a year, it sold 23 million copies. This game in like, a few days has sold 10 million. That's outrageous. That's crazy. So no matter which way you look at it, it's a tremendous success. This was earlier this morning, but if I refresh it now, it's down because most of the player base seems to be tied up in, maybe not most, but a lot of the player base seems to be tied up in China. And so the peaks tend to be in the late evening in China. That seems to be when the most players are jumping in. We'll see if this peaks again over the weekend, if a lot more players are jumping in, but it does seem to be very, very heavily geared towards Eastern markets. I don't know exactly, it seems like most of the peaks tend to start dying off around middle of, players are playing a lot in the morning in the US, which is not what you would typically expect. You expect the peaks to be more in the evenings. So it seems like the player base is not necessarily US centric, but it's totally fine. Players are players, gamers are gamers. All-time peak at 2.4 million yesterday. So it's breaking records even still. And this weekend, it very well might break another record. Even still, though, there's companies that are still trying to get the game basically canceled. Nintendo Enthusiast, which is apparently an institution or a company that is covering this, they posted an article saying, "We all share a common hobby, and we should stand together to make sure as many people can enjoy this as possible." And then the title of it is Black Myth Wukong's shameless lack of diversity is attracting the wrong type of fans. And then, as they say, bro, they're still trying. Again, this is a game in which you play as a monkey beating up lions, bears, and dragons. You even transform in the game into like a cicada and fly about. It's quite varied, dare I say, diverse. But it doesn't fit into the type of diversity they're looking for. What's even more crazy is that they say we should stand together to make sure as many people can enjoy it as possible, implying that because there are not more, I'm assuming what they're asking for is more representation of, say, like women, people of color, trans characters, things like that. Because there's not enough of that, minorities, whatever. Therefore, not as many people can enjoy it. And I think that is such like a ridiculous thing to say, that somebody's not going to play a game, again, where you play as a monkey, beating up bears and tigers and dragons. Somebody's not going to play it because there isn't somebody that looks exactly like them in the game. Like, there are not white dudes from Colorado in this game. And I'm having a great time. Like, very, very few people are gonna be like buying games purely for that reason. It's just, and I think it's pretty clear when you design games solely around that, it doesn't actually follow through with much success. But even still, there's still people sitting on the sidelines hoping to get their hands on it. There are people that are not able to play this for various reasons. Such as Xbox gamers specifically. And there is actually an update on Xbox's port with this. So, as you can see, the game was originally scheduled to release on the consoles alongside the PC and PlayStation before it was revealed in June to not be coming to Xbox at the same time. Then later that month, Xbox issued a statement on the game's delay on the console, saying they were, quote, excited for the launch of Black Myth Wukong on Xbox and Series X and S, and we're working with Game Science to bring the game to our platforms. And now that the game is out, there's a bit of an update. According to Forbes' Paul Tassi, Black Myth Wukong not being on Xbox isn't a case of Sony snatching up any sort of console exclusive agreement with the developer. Instead, it's Microsoft's own consoles and their policies causing the hiccups. Quote, the bad news is that once again, Xbox seems to have blundered into a Baldur's Gate 3 situation, which, if you don't recall, basically Baldur's Gate 3 didn't launch on Xbox at the same time as PlayStation because they could not get the split screen functionality working on the Series S, and so they needed an override to gain the ability to basically launch it. Like, they basically needed to be able to turn that feature off. But the policy at Xbox was any game that goes to the Series X has to be identical on the Series S. You can change the resolution, scaling, the graphic settings, whatever, but it has to be the same game. The content has to be the same. And they had to get an override from Microsoft to allow them to publish it on the Series S without that feature, which is why they had to delay it. Tassi follows up, says that the reason the game didn't make it on Xbox, again, everybody kind of knew this already, is because of a tech issue. While the specific issue isn't mentioned in the report, it does seem to imply that the game isn't running on Series S as well as it should be, and Microsoft's policy since the console's launch of games coming to both X and S seems to have backfired once again. Again, the policy is that people who bought an S will get the same games as on the X, and so there's no way to launch your game just on the Series X. It has to go on both. Insider Gaming has reached out to Microsoft on this claim, but a rep simply passed along the same statement from June that was also sent to Tassie, just copy and pasted once again. We're excited for the launch of Black Myth Wukong, blah, 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 and we're working with them. We can't comment on deals made by our partners with other platform holders. Again, there was no deal made. They just simply couldn't get it running on the Series S, so this isn't relevant. But we remain focused on making Xbox the best platform for gamers, and great games are at the center of that. Whatever. There's still no word on when to expect it. There's still no word on anything like that. But it's, again, another example of Microsoft missing out on one of the biggest games of the year simply because they're holding back their platform with a console that can't keep up. And again, there's people that get very, very upset when you bring up the Series S like being weak, and I just don't know how else to put it than like at this point it is not up for debate. The Series S is the weakest console on the market right now for these cross-platform titles, and it can't keep up with the other consoles that are still struggling. Like the PlayStation is still struggling in comparison to PC, certainly. And it's, I mean, as is outlined here by Digital Foundry, even on PlayStation 5, it's having troubles. So on the Series S, I can only imagine. This is their comment on the Series, or on the PlayStation 5.
The performance mode uses frame generation. And there are tons of signs of it that you can see all over the place, like at the corner of the frame with motion blur on, there's visible artifacting. Little particles have lots of artifacting in them, and if you go frame by frame or even just watch it in real time, frankly, you will see a lot of artifacts during fast motion where clearly there's a real frame and an interpolated frame and a real frame and an interpolated frame. It is kind of an abuse of this technology because they're trying to use it to hit 60 FPS. The base frame rate is only 30 FPS, and this is a really fast-paced game. A lot of action, a lot of violence to it, a lot of movement, and it just does not love this technique. It does not love it.
Yeah, 30 to 60 FPS frame interpolation or generation is always, it's very situation dependent, whether or not it can be useful, and it requires high quality. FSR 3 frame generation, as we know, is a little bit lower quality than DLSS 3, where it's already a stretch to get that 30 to 60 to look good. And then you combine it with the serious amount of transparencies, fast motion, and the sharpening, and then the motion blur, which has its artifacts of its own, and then the 1080p base resolution here, what it appears to be. It's really pushing the technology well beyond the breaking point of what I think is acceptable.
And I'm inclined to kind of agree. I think if you look at the PS5 performance mode, it's real rough. Like, I understand some people are able to turn their brain off to it, but I just personally can't. Like the PS5, it's this stuff I can't do. Like, you see the weird, like, it's almost like, you know, whatever is it cross hashing, cross sketching? I forget what the name of it is. But there's like this weird checkerboarding all throughout whenever there's a frame generated. And it's super, super distracting. It destroys all detail in the frame. And it drives me crazy. Like, I just can't do it. I can't do it. I would rather play Black Myth at 30 frames at a higher resolution without this than get to technically 60 frames or close to it, but it looks like absolute garbage. So that's just my personal preference. I know some people can turn their brains off to it. Joel Raptor was saying he thinks the game looks really good and runs really well on performance mode. I don't know if he was being totally sarcastic or not, but to me, it's too rough to play on performance mode. Just personally, I can't do it. I can't do it. Unless you're used to a beefy PC, the PS5 version is just fine. You notice some of that stuff, but it seems minor. Well, I think it also depends on the display you're using. Again, on a smaller display, really doesn't look that bad. On a big TV or even just on a monitor you're sitting close to, it's very, very noticeable. And I do totally agree that after you try the game on PC and then you go to PS5, it's way more noticeable. But I criticize Star Wars Jedi Survivor for having similar problems and relying too much on upscaling to hit frame rate targets. And in this case, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Hazardous Roman, also thank you for resubbing with Prime 3 months. Ooh, baby. Thank you for that. Thank you. Somaya, thank you for the super chat. I am at the later half of Wukong, and I think the game is a 7 out of 10 with some beautifully animated sequences, but levels get hollow after a while, which is most of the game. I'm unsure now whether it will win Game of the Year. Yeah, I'm not sure if it'll win. I think it'll probably gets nominated at the very least, but I think you're right. I mean, you guys remember when we were talking about Black Myth Wukong months ago, what I kept asking for was, what is the connective tissue? The boss fights that they keep showing look awesome, but what's the connective tissue between boss fights? What do you do from one boss fight to the next? Is it just you go through a door and you load into a new boss fight? Cool. I'm down with that. The boss fights look awesome. Okay, it's just one after another. But now we know that no, there's levels to explore. There's little things hidden around corners, and there's little hidden bosses and encounters and stuff. But that connective tissue is where the game is weakest. And I think that that's pretty clear that there's a reason they weren't showing a lot of that in preview events, because it was the weakest part. But the boss fights are really the boss fights are really good. And so that's just where we are. Okay, let me catch up. Let me do one more. We do one more. And then the rest, I guess, we'll have to get to on Monday. I think we're going to do another deep dive into Crimson Desert. So do I save Crimson Desert for that? Yeah, I think that's what we'll do. We'll do a full deep dive into Crimson Desert Monday. I think that's what we do. So to wrap this up, let's talk about another game that's hotly anticipated and hotly debated right now. Where's the post about it? Okay. You ready? You ready? News segment. Here we go. Ryan McCaffrey, the senior executive editor at IGN, got a preview of Indiana Jones. A preview, you say? He says, I got an extended look at Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and it is now, quote, the #1 game on my list for the rest of the year. Why? Indy absolutely screams Riddick, which this core dev team made 20 years ago. If you know, you know. Read my preview here. And it's just a breakdown of what they saw. Some screenshots we haven't seen before. Some little things here and there, as you can see. But he explains what he thinks of it. What does he think? The last time the developers of Machine Games made an Xbox exclusive first-person action adventure based on a movie character, it turned out to be one of the best experiences of the entire original Xbox and PS2 generation. It's too bad this one isn't exclusive. I mean, like a little bit for a little while, but it's not technically exclusive. Anyway, that game was the Chronicles of Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay, back when the core of Machine Games was still at Starbreeze. I bring this up because after I got to see an extended demo of the studio's newest project, the also Xbox exclusive for a few months, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, I couldn't help but be strongly, and I do mean strongly in italics, reminded of the Vin Diesel starring original Xbox classic. Can you imagine if Vin Diesel was in this? Jesus Christ, we dodged a bullet with that. In the very best of ways. Indy absolutely screams Riddick, and because of that, The Great Circle went from something on my most anticipated list to being far and away the game I'm most looking forward to playing this year, specifically December 9th on Xbox and PC, with PS5 getting it in spring of 25. My hands-off demo began in where else? A huge underground temple with the sun shining down onto a small figurine. Indy picks it up and the door closes behind him. He cracks the figurine open with a rock. Inside is a small block of some sort, a key perhaps. Naturally, this triggers a cave-in with our hero remarking, "Oh, you gotta be kidding me." The player takes over as the camera shifts shifts to a first person, though it will go third person for platforming sequences. As sand fills the room, Indy shuffles over to a window that's suddenly become reachable thanks to all the sand. He tumbles into a stand and then a run, a stamina bar showing how much longer Jones can keep sprinting. He uses his trusty whip to make a leap across a chasm as the temple conditions grow more lethal by the second. He goes into a slide to exit the temple just in the nick of time. Machine Games promises plenty of these kinds of exhilarating action sequences in the Great Circle, which notably, just like in Riddick, rarely involves the use of a gun. Sure, Dr. Jones has his trademark revolver, but as creative director Axel Torvenius explained, quote, "The key to the combat is to carefully decide your approach. It's very dangerous in this game to fire a gun. It won't be done particularly often, and it shouldn't be taken lightly when the moment comes. You should, firstmost, try to use your wits and your whip." Giggity. To understand that there are optional ways to solve problems. End quote. Don't then call this indie game a first-person shooter. It's a very first-person game, all right, but it's decidedly not a shooter. It's a mix of puzzle solving, platforming, stealth, and combat, just like this team's first game that starred a certain bald convict who can see really well in the dark. Quote, "The focus for this game is adventure," said director Jörg Gustafsson. I'm going to say Jörg. I think that's how it is instead of jerk. I think it's Jörg. Anyway, we want exploration to feel truly rewarding, end quote. As such, one of your primary tools is Indy's journal. It starts blank, but quickly becomes a jam-packed archive of your travels, which will include visits to Egypt and the Himalayas, among several other locales. Furthering the spirit of adventure, there will be times where you'll wear disguises in order to fit in, like one scene where I saw where our favorite professor of archaeology dresses up like a priest in order to infiltrate a heavily guarded area. The adventure focus will even reflect in gameplay structure of the Great Circle, with Machine Games revealing that the campaign will consist of a mix of linear areas and more open areas that you're free to wander within. I think my big takeaway from this so far is that I'm surprised that they are actively describing it as not a first-person shooter, which is just kind of what's assumed as Machine Games. It's a first-person shooter, whatever. But no, they're like, it's more of an Uncharted game that's in first person, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, to be very clear, but it's just an interesting distinction to make. Like, don't expect this to be super heavy in like shooting arenas or anything like that. It's more about exploration and adventure, which, in my opinion, I think they need to make that clearer in the marketing, because so far it does seem to play more like a first-person shooter, and that's what people will compare it to and hold it up to. So if it really is not supposed to be that, I think they need to be clearer about that, which is why maybe previews like this are good. Meanwhile, you'll earn adventure points, AP, by finding journal entry-worthy items and secrets, as well as by taking pictures of key items with your camera, and those points can be spent to upgrade your Indiana Jones to play more like you prefer, be it upping your stealth abilities, combat abilities like True Grit, which essentially lets you survive an otherwise fatal blow to get back in the fight, or other skills. Machine Games says there are, quote, dozens, end quote, of upgrades to choose from. You can also buy items from shopkeepers, like one that I saw that had a monkey beside him at his booth. What these are, though, I have not seen. So you can upgrade Indy. So not quite like Uncharted. A little more customizable. Interesting. Much of the combat looks like it'll involve your fists, but like in Riddick, your foes won't go down with a simple press of the button. You'll have to skillfully parry, block, and combo your way to victory in hand-to-hand combat, and don't be afraid to get your whip involved too, by lashing it at opponents' feet to knock them down as one example of what it can do for you in gameplay. But your dukes aren't always going to be your go-to weapons. I saw Indy use a rolling pin in a kitchen to bash a Nazi's face in. I also watched him pick up a shovel, sneak up behind a Nazi, and whack him on the back of the head. In fact, sneaking looks to be a big part of the Great Circle, with stealth emphasized as a core tenet of the gameplay, as it was in Escape from Butcher Bay. Interesting. Something Richard B. Riddick doesn't do, though, was bring any friends along with him for the ride. Indiana Jones, on the other hand, will welcome help along the way. I saw a couple of companions at his side throughout my demo across numerous scenes in the game. They're not always around, but when they are by your side, I didn't see enough to know exactly what they'll be capable of. Are they solely to help advance the plot and allow for more indie quips, or will they also offer an Elizabeth and Bioshock Infinite-like assistance in combat? Remains to be seen. But my demo ended with a sequence that showed off a lot of what the Great Circle is going to be all about. Adventuring, avoiding traps, and solving puzzles. To find a key that would unlock a temple, Indy needed to sneak into an enemy territory disguised as a regular worker. After snooping around for a while, he finds the golden medallion he's after and takes it quietly, banking on +5 adventure points. He encountered 4 bad guys at the table and this time walks out of the tent without incident. Upon returning to the nearby temple's hidden doors and inserting the medallion, the door opens. Indy and his accompanying ally go deeper into the darkness, using a lighter to illuminate the way. Quote, "This hasn't been disturbed for thousands of years," the professor remarks. They slowly explore the dark temple before lighting up a torch. At the end of a narrow hallway stands an ornate iron gate. Pulling the lever causes the floor to give way, revealing spikes underneath. The companion saves Indy from being impaled, and Indy then uses his whip to hook onto a bar above and then lower himself down to a newly revealed crawl space underneath the floor. He shuffles through, pulls a chain, yanks it, and the gate opens. Both Dr. Jones and his ally find a mural and take a photo of it for 10 more adventure points. They come to a sunlit room with a half obelisk, half throne in the back room, bathed in sunlight. Sunbeams point to a golden mask. The puzzle here is to redirect the sunbeams by tilting the mirrors adjacent to the throne. Your companion grabs the mask after the mirrors are aligned properly, and in a moment of overexcitement, she sits in the throne with the mask, and the seat of the throne gives way as Indy reaches to save her, though. Both end up dragged down to a darkened pit below, where the light of the torch reveals the floor covered in scorpions. You thought I was going to say snakes, didn't you? Interesting. Very, very different from what I would have expected. The fact is, this core group of developers at Machine Games, many of whom have been together for nearly 2 decades, have never missed. I think the core group is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Because what was the most recent one they did? What was the most recent one they did? I've always forget the name of it. The co-op thing they did? Youngblood? Was Youngblood technically and like verifiably by a spin-off studio? Like a spin-off team? Wolfenstein Youngblood. It was developed by Machine Games and Arcane Leon. Development, Bethesda announced it at E3 2018. It was developed by Machine Games, which led the development, and by Arcane Studios. Doesn't seem clear who was responsible for it, but the point is, I don't know how true that is, that the core team has never missed. I mean, I think their recent one was a pretty hard miss, but whatever. Many of whom have been together for 2 decades and never missed. From Riddick to the Darkness to the modern Wolfenstein games, this is an incredibly successful team, and now Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is a playable Indiana Jones adventure being built using the best parts of the template that this development team has used to make its first, and in my humble opinion, best game of all. I absolutely can't wait to play it. Yeah, just considering Youngblood, I mean, I'm a little more hesitant to get jubilantly excited for it. I do think it has potential. I'm not dismissing it outright. I know some people are like, nope, it's first person, I'm not interested. It does seem like it could be really interesting. And you guys know me, I love these types of adventure games. I love games with big set pieces, which this game obviously has. So I'm intrigued by it. I hope that it's really, really good, but I'm gonna remain cautiously optimistic. So time will tell. Time will tell. But it's mainly because, again, like, he must know something we don't, because I don't know how you could point to this and not mention Youngblood, but considering it was a collaborative effort with Arcane Lyon, maybe Arcane was more responsible for the game than they were. I'm not sure. But regardless, we have that. So we will see, but people are trying it. People are apparently pretty excited for it. But like I said, it's kind of mired, I don't know, in negativity right now, just because people are particularly, I think people are really sassy about the PS5 port. And the way that they announced it was kind of weird. Like, they did this one more thing, and I think they expected people to be like super jubilantly excited for it when they just weren't really that thrilled. So like, if we Gamescom Indiana Jones, if I can find the actual like stage bit. Gamescom Indiana Jones reveal, maybe? Yeah, I want the actual like stage reveal. Maybe we don't get it. I don't know. Seems weird it's not showing up. Maybe it's because I have the space. Gamescom reveal. Yeah, this. So they did this thing where like Jeff Keighley's on stage. He's like, but there's one more thing.
Floor, but you're probably wondering when the game comes out, right? Well,
part of this reveal was just like, it's muted because, for one, the crowd is really quiet for whatever reason, and this also leaked earlier in the morning.
Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is coming out this December for Xbox Game Pass and PC. But there is one more thing that Machine Games and Bethesda wanted to share with you about Indiana Jones and the Great Circle.
See, it's like one more thing, super exciting, but this was also leaked ahead of time, so people already kind of knew it.
The game's coming to PlayStation 5 in spring of 2025. All right.
And so people are talking about that. Like, that's kind of dominating the discourse with the game right now. And obviously, like, there's not a whole lot that can be said about it. You know, I think Phil Spencer is kind of in a tough spot with it, because I get the impression that this isn't really his doing. I think it's more just the math works out this way, and their hands are kind of tied. If they want this to be profitable, they have to bring it somewhere else. And that's reflected in some of the statements that he's made about it, where he's just tried to be very clear about it, but there's not much that can be said. Here's what he said about it at Gamescom.
Going to the PlayStation announcement, obviously last spring, we launched 4 games, 2 of them on the Switch, 4 of them on PlayStation, and we said we're going to learn. We said we'd watch, and I think at Showcase, I might have said, from our learning, we're going to do more. Mm-hmm. What I see when I look is our franchises are getting stronger. Our Xbox console players are as high this year as they've ever been.
Amazing.
So I look at it and I say, okay, our player numbers are going up for the console platform. Our franchises are as strong as they've ever been. And we run a business. Like, it's definitely true inside of Microsoft. The bar is high for us in terms of the delivery that we have to give back to the company, because we get a level of support from the company that's just amazing in what we're able to go do. So I look at this, how can we make our games as strong as possible? Our platform continues to grow, both on console, on PC, and on cloud. And I think it's just going to be a strategy that works for us. And the last thing I'll probably say is, I think as an industry right now, there's a lot of pressure on the industry. It's been growing for a long time, and now people are looking for ways to grow. And I think that us as fans, as players of games, we just have to anticipate there's going to be more change in how some of the traditional ways that games were built and distributed. That's going to change. That's going to change for all of us. But the end result has to be better games that more people can play. If we're not focused on that, I think we're focused on the wrong things. So for us as Xbox, health of Xbox, health of our platform, and our growing games, most important things.
Translation from corporate speak to what is actually being said here. Games are very expensive to make. Xbox as a platform is pretty small, and if we sold this exclusively on Xbox, we wouldn't be able to pay the bills. And this is true of pretty much everybody in the industry right now, so things have to change, which is why PlayStation is also going multi-platform, bringing games to PC, and Xbox is going to start bringing stuff to PlayStation 5, and of course, everything's on PC and Xbox as well. So things are going to continue changing because that's the only way we can remain profitable while still increasing the size and scope and budget of games. So that's going to change. And our hands are kind of tied because this game is so expensive and Disney's taking a cut, blah, blah, blah. So the only way we can make it make sense financially is by bringing it to another platform. Honestly, I think that's fair. I still think it's also fair for Xbox, like diehard console fans, to be upset about it, because I get it. Like, they've been invested in the platform for a long time. A lot of them thought that by Microsoft spending all this money on acquisitions that they were going to finally get those exclusive games like PlayStation had for so long. But that's just frankly not how it can work for Xbox. It would take them probably 2 generations to catch up in market share to PlayStation and to undo the damage of the Xbox One and early Xbox Series generation. And it's really hard to tell your boss, Satya Nadella, who runs like a $2 to $3 trillion company, it's really hard to tell him, hey, thanks for the 77-ish so far $billion you let us spend on stuff, but we're not going to be able to really make headway for another like 10 to 15 years. It's really tough to tell your boss that. And I think if he tried to tell his boss that, Satya was like, I don't care. You need to figure out ways to increase revenues. We bought all these studios. Gamers want your stuff. So sell it on PlayStation. Bring Call of Duty to PlayStation. Don't make it exclusive. Like, if you made Call of Duty exclusive, if you made all these games super hyper exclusive, you might sell some more Xboxes, sure. But again, PlayStation has such a lead in terms of platform, and maybe I'm crazy for mentioning this. People don't just have $500-$600 to go and spend on another console casually like it's nothing. It's a pretty big choice, and that's why most people make their choice of what platform they're going to at the start of the generation when they have saved up money and they're like, okay, next generation, this will get me through the next 7 years. This is where we're at. So even with that, like, you have everything exclusive at the top of next generation, you might win over some converts, you might gain some market share, but you're not going to be at 50-50. You're certainly not going to be the market share leader going into the next generation. So you got to wait basically another generation, slowly gaining ground, and then win people over all along the way and hope that for the PlayStation 7 generation, you find a lot of success. And again, that's probably like 10 to 15 years away. So for them, they're like, we can wait 10 to 15 years and hope we figure it out by then, or we can just start trying to make money today. And honestly, I don't blame them for doing that. So I think people are right to feel frustrated because there has been a lot of double speak. I think Phil's been very, very careful with his words. I heard those interviews he did earlier this year and even last year about exclusives coming to other platforms. And he was always super, super coy and careful with his words. You know, well, we haven't made decisions yet. Or for these 4 games, they're not Starfield and Indiana Jones, which was true. Those 4 games, of those that were going to PlayStation, those Starfield and Indiana Jones were not in those 4. But he didn't say they would never be coming to PlayStation. So I think he's been very, very coy, and my stance is I just think they need to be very transparent. If the policy is now going to be big AAA stuff comes to PlayStation 6 months later, okay, be clear about it, say it, and just rip the Band-Aid off. Doing this weird like dancing around, not answering anything clearly, I don't think really helps anybody. It doesn't instill confidence in the platform or in the games, and it's just a weird look, frankly. So we'll see what happens. People that are actually trying Indiana Jones seem to be stoked on it. They seem to really like it. So maybe it ends up being really good. Maybe it ends up being just fine. But either way, it seems like Xbox expects it to be good and to pop off, which is why they're planning a PS5 launch. But then again, they also thought that Redfall was going to be like a big platform seller. So make of that what you will. Real quick, thank you, Papa Guru. Thank you for that. I was so excited for Marathon until I found out it could become a hero shooter. This setting would be so cool for custom characters. Also, any news on Crimson Desert? Yeah, we have 3 new boss fights that they revealed. I think on Monday we're going to do a deep dive into it, so we'll check it out then. I think I just don't have time today, but yeah, I also think like a lot of people still don't realize Marathon has transitioned into a hero shooter after they got a new game director that previously worked on Valorant. So I think it's just layers of complexity there. Sarge, thank you also for re-upping your membership. Hey Luke, how are you? I'm good. Did you know that PlayStation is charging the Turkish users $80? The average salary in Turkey is $400 monthly, I think that must mean. So they're charging users in Turkey the equivalent of $80 when the average salary is $400. Yeah, I mean, it's also, I think Brazil is also stupid expensive for whatever reason. The conversion rates are just like that. It's like actually insane. So yeah, I won't pretend to understand how or why they arrive at those pricing decisions, but it's insane how they price stuff like that, and then they're like, why is piracy higher in these regions? It's like, 'cause you have to basically miss your mortgage payment to buy a single video game. It's insane. Can you check Gothic Remake? Co Carnage played it. I do have the trailer thing pulled up on a tab, but I'm just out of time today, guys. We rambled. Shocker, right? That's amazing. But I rambled enough, so I can't. For Brazil, it's more due to import taxes. Okay, that makes sense. Import taxes, tariffs, stuff like that. Yeah, 2-hour stream going real well. Yeah, for real, dude. Okay. I think I'm all caught up on that stuff. Well, anyway, guys, you guys have been amazing today. Very, very generous with super chats and then memberships and subs and everything. You guys are crazy. It must be the shirt. I appreciate the gosh darn heck out of you guys. Like I said, I'm just out of time because I got to crunch for some other big projects we're working on. But I love the gosh darn heck out of every single one of you. You guys are amazing. It's the beard. Oh, I should have. That's the beard. Damn it. So I love the gosh darn heck out of every single one of you. You guys are amazing. I'll be back Monday with lots of stuff to talk about. And we should be able to talk about Star Wars Outlaws on Monday as well. So there's going to be plenty to discuss. So just buckle up, buckaroo for that one. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subbing. Thanks for all that. You guys make my dreams a reality. Never think I take it for granted. I do not. I love you dearly. And I'll see you in the next one. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye, my friends.